Pardon?
2018 for
Oh,
me.
okay.
Mhm. Did you have a good time there?
Yeah, I did. I credit the program helped me find my voice as a writer. So.
Yeah, definitely. Guys, I took classes from some really great people like Tina Jens, Richard Schwedick, Mark Castle. We're all there as the sort of genre teachers at that time. So.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mark's a good friend of mine. So.
Oh, really?
He's still teaching her.
I think he retired last year. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll swap you. Yeah.
Yeah. Economy size table.
I might even be stealing the moderator position. I might even be stealing the moderator spot because I was supposed to be, they thought I was on Zoom.
You're the moderator, right?
I'm not,
Oh, you're not?
as far as I know. Oh, God, I hope not.
Hi, how are you? What is?
Yes,
No.
my husband's a her.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Same day.
Yeah. When did he pass away?
Huh?
When did he pass away?
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
And just pictures there. We also can bring deed to.
Yeah.
52.
That's lovely.
That's beautiful.
It's a garden plant.
Oh.
I made it here. Y'all have to be-
So did you get an air trigger?
I did. I
Did you?
went to Hair Trigger 40, which was,
Great.
yeah.
I never made an air trigger.
I wrote something, I think, centered more towards their taste. And then,
Yeah, I think it was I think I read one of your things was posted online. Did you have a couple stories were posted online, or am I thinking of someone else?
I think you're thinking of someone else. I've had some poetry online. Well, no, I've had a couple of pieces, but it was a lot of it. Yeah. These are like the.
Hello.
Oh, hi. Let me.
So you're the moderator?
What?
You the moderator?
I didn't think I was.
I didn't think I was.
Are
either,
you the
so-
moderator, Eric? It's not.
Actually, I might be. I should know. I'm the guy who put together the program book.
Oh, okay, well,
I'm really sorry.
Are you the moderator? No.
I don't know.
Probably me. Hold on.
Oh, Stephen?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
I just got added at the last minute. so.
Yeah, I was thinking, I didn't remember that you were.
No, I wasn't. By the time it got scrambled, the program, by the time it got straightened out, it was too late to put it in the program.
Well, that's what they tell you, but since it's an
Well, yeah.
electronic program book, I could have made changes up until like this morning.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Saturday, right?
Yes.
Nope, Lyda Morehouse is the moderator.
She's gonna be here remotely?
She was remotely last night.
Yeah, I was thinking she was remote. Okay, no moderator. And it's time that we start. Okay, so I'm not the moderator because there is no moderator on this panel. You can't make me moderate. But welcome. This panel is too small to read because I'm old.
Creativity during a pandemic.
Right. Creativity during a pandemic. And I just lost it. Anyway, on the panel, we have.
Hi, I'm Maria Schrader. I'm a writer and poet based in Chicago, and I'm also the assistant editor for Apparition Lit, which is a genre magazine online.
And on the far end.
I'm Eric Flint, author. I've written a lot of books. I think probably the reason I'm on the panel is because I've been writing full time for 20 years. It gives you a different view of pretty much everything. So anyway, that's that.
To my immediate right.
Hi, I'm Michael A. Black. I'm principally a thriller writer, mystery writer, but I have been publishing in the sci-fi genre. In fact, my latest one is an ebook called Star Noir. If you're interested, it's available. This is probably my third Windycon. I haven't been here in the last couple of years, and then last year obviously was canceled. But I'm really looking forward to this year's Windycon because these are always a lot of fun, and you all are great people. Thank you for coming.
And I'm Stephen Silver. I've been a published author since 2008. During the pandemic, I published my first novel. Well, the gentleman at the end of the table actually published my first novel, so thank you. And I'm here to talk about creativity during the pandemic. So who wants to start? Yes, she was the first one.
Well, all right, I'll start. I've had a lot of people say to me, people who know that I work at home because I write full time, and they say, "Boy, you must have gotten a lot of work done during the pandemic because you didn't have anything else to do, you lazy guy, except write." And the truth is, I got a lot of work done, but I actually kind of found it enervating in a way. I think I would have gotten more work done if I'd been doing my usual schedule and, been more active, just because, I don't know, I'm guessing, but it's not like I keep a record of exactly how much I write, but I just felt that a lot of the time was kind of, I don't know, just sort of pissed away. I mean, it was like nothing broke up your day.
Well, I think part of it also is, yes, everybody was stuck at home.
Yeah.
And so you say, okay, well, obviously this is time to write, but everybody was also dealing with major issues, emotional, social, intellectual, health, and so on, that takes up a lot of your energy. It's like, if you suffer from depression, fighting depression takes up a lot of energy. And so people look at you and say, well, you're not doing anything. It's like, you actually are. There's a lot going on underneath the surface. And all of us were having that happen over the last year and a half. And so cruising Facebook, for instance, may look like a complete waste of time, and you're not using your creativity, you're not writing, you're not doing something productive. But it was a way of having a connection with people who you knew or even didn't know, but couldn't see. And you had that I can't see people thing going. And even if you were an introvert, you discovered that at some point you do need other people. So, and from my own point of view, like I said, published a book during the pandemic. Recommendation, never publish a debut novel in the middle of a pandemic. The timing was not great. And after it came out, my editor, who is not in fact Eric, contacted me and said, so when am I going to see a sequel? And I knew what I wanted to write for a sequel. The problem was I was stuck at home, and all the reference books that I needed were not. And as I started to work on outlining and everything, I realized I really needed to get into a world-class library, which wasn't going to happen until I don't know when. So then I started to rethink what the sequel would be, that I would be able to write with the references that I had at home. So yes, I have started that many times.
Your book did very well.
So I hope my book continues to do very well.
Yeah, no, I think Stephen had one of her first novel, best-selling ones we've published. And part of it is he knows how to promote it the right way. That helps a lot. But it's interesting, Stephen. I hadn't thought of that because Walt Boyce is my editor. I just so y'all know, in addition to being an author for several years now, I've been a publisher also. I have my own press called Ring of Fire Press, and we have, as of now, published somewhere over 130 volumes. But I hadn't thought of that. That's, the research you'd have to do. It's,
Unfortunately, no, I'm not selling the shirts. I would love to, but I don't actually own the rights. So I figured I could make a couple for personal use, but unless I talk to the artist, and work out a deal with Eric and the artist, I can't actually sell them. So
But you're selling the books, right?
I have copies of the books with me.
Excellent. And
it's very good too.
jumping off of Stephen's point a little bit as far as creativity and research, one of the things that I was working from home during the pandemic, I'm not writing full time, but I do have a day job that it mostly involves typing. So that plus writing, I'm sitting still a lot of the time and working on the computer. And so the pandemic really pushed me, I think, to try to become more interdisciplinary. I started writing a novel where the main character, embroidered for a living. And so I said, let me go to Michael's and pick up a $10 hoop and, try to do one of these kits. And it worked really well. And it taught me a lot about just the physicality of it, how, the cramps in my hands, if I went, too far, sort of tightness of my muscles, the eye strain, stuff like that, that I wouldn't have necessarily known, even just from reading about it. And my research is also hampered by the pandemic, but it's also, so I was looking at a lot of, stuff that was really interesting, like SCA blogging, to talk about like historical embroidery frames, finding like some old woodcuts. And it took a lot, I think, more effort than trying to get to a really good reference library. But it was really interesting to then read other people's perspectives who had also been trying to reenact or trying to figure out this ancient, these antique practices and how they're able to successfully do it. And I think that learning from each other and learning with your hands really has gotten me through it.
Well, you mentioned going to Michael's to pick up the hoop.
Mhm.
One of the creative things that I did at one point last year was each week I was choosing a different country in the world. And I would decide that Saturday night I was going to cook a meal based on the cuisine of a different country. And so, I got into Zimbabwean cooking, Kazakhstani cooking, and so on. But especially when we weren't going out to shopping to stores very often, or when you were ordering in, and even when you could go into stores again, the supply chain issues meant that it was hard to get a lot of the ingredients that I needed or wanted. So, but that was another outlet for creativity. I mean, it's not all just sitting at the, all of us are multifaceted. We all have different ways that we get creative, whether it's painting or writing or needlepoint, was it that you said?
Yeah, cross stitch.
Cross stitch, or cooking, and a lot of people picked up on it. And frankly, I was reading about all these people. Well, what is your hobby during the pandemic? What have you picked up? And like Eric, I work from home. My day job has me at home even before lockdown. And honestly, my days didn't change that much because of lockdown. It meant that I wasn't going out to restaurants. I wasn't seeing friends. I wasn't going to conventions. I wasn't traveling. But, I was still sitting in front of my work computer from, 8:30 in the morning until 5:30 in the afternoon, doing my day job. And then in the evening, I would, get on to my home computer and I would do some writing or I would do reading or whatever. And my life just really didn't change that much, except that I didn't have face-to-face contact with people. I wasn't going out.
I can't really say that it stifled my creativity. I managed to get 5 novels written in the course of the year. One of the main reasons was I couldn't do anything. As Steven said, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't go out. College classes I teach were canceled. I didn't want to do them remotely because I didn't think that would be an effective way to handle classes. But so I practically changed myself to the computer, and I did miss the social interaction that I was used to. But I think looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have been able to do as much writing as I did if it weren't for the quarantine and everything.
So did being quarantined change your process, or did it change what you were writing about in any way?
Well, that's an interesting question because I was trying to debate whether I should put the pandemic into my writing. I didn't know how people would receive it, if they would. I mean, everybody was so sick of everything, really. And if you put that's a good question. Do you put the pandemic in your fiction, or are people going to be so tired of it that they're not going to want to read it? So I had a friend who wrote a book, was set during the pandemic times, and he said he sent it in. He thought it was his best work, and the editor said, no, people don't want to read this because they're so tired of all the restrictions and the lockdown and everything else. They're not going to want to read this, so they rejected it.
Yeah, I actually read a book in February of last year, February of 2020, before the lockdown happened, that had to deal with the pandemic, and the book wasn't actually being published until I think April. And around March, I'm going, oh, that book's going to be received very differently than it would have been received when, if it had been published earlier.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things I was also thinking is, as I was driving in about this panel is, we always say that fiction has to make sense. Reality doesn't really have to. And theoretically, what I've learned during the last year and a half is my characters do not have to act in any rational manner, because I've seen so much irrational behavior over the last 20 months. But in point of fact, in the book, they actually do still have to behave rationally. So
I have a co-author. He and I write alternate history together, and he's a good writer. He tends to be a fuss budget and will argue that no, I don't think this is plausible, that this would not happen historically. And he and I were having not a quarrel, but a dispute over whether this was possible or not. And I said to him, Walter, we live in a world where Donald Trump just got elected president of the United States. So please don't tell me what is and is not possible. And historically, all kinds of weird stuff happens. I have often told people, in fact, I wrote a whole long essay for it for Science Fiction Writers Association's bulletin on it, which unfortunately the article was published the same issue where the Maltzberg-Resnick Chronicles blew up, and so it just kind of got buried. But as to why to go to conventions and why not to go. And the point I made was that going to conventions for the purpose of promoting your work is a fool's game. You will never, ever, I don't care where you are in your career, generate enough sales doing it that way that you will make up the income you lost going to the convention. And it doesn't matter where you are. You can be, I often get invited to come to conventions, the guest of honor, and they pay my way the whole way. Yeah, fine, except that I figure I lose at least 6 days of work if I go to a convention. And that's what economists call opportunity cost. And, that's a lot of money, which you're losing. So that's not a good reason to go. If you're going to go, then you may as well do what you can to promote your work, but don't do it for that reason. The main reasons I go are two. You will over time build up a professional network, which will be of aid to you at some point, and you don't know when, you can't predict it. But I've almost never seen it not pay off for a writer to develop a writer, a professional network, and sooner or later it pays off one way or another. And the other reason I go, though, I just find it's good for my mental health. You know, because every 2 months or so, I like to go somewhere and, you know, interact with people I didn't invent. I can't predict what they're gonna say. You know, I mean, it's just, I just find it's part of what I described as the enervating feeling I had of being at home all the time. It's just, you know, you're not getting a whole lot of stimulation other than what you generate yourself from your writing, and that's quite a bit, but you need more than that. So I'm hoping we don't have another one, at least in my lifetime. And I'm not really wishing it on people after my lifetime, but I just soon not have to go through it again.
I think that's great to hear on my end as well, because this is my second convention ever. So if anyone wants to be my friend, hit me up. Yeah, I'm still in the very early stages of my career, so I'm so happy to be at this table with, you know, these incredible, well-established writers and these well-established faces in the community, since I'm very new here. And one of
Very
the
good,
things.
thank you.
Oh, no, give that. I'll take it. I'm just out of college. But one of the things that, so I really started to start my career during this pandemic. And I think that's made me really have to socialize with other writers differently, because I really do think that as creatives, we are all feeding off of each other. I can get inspired by art. My partner, you know, does some incredible like woodworking, and I can watch that and, you know, become inspired by that in a different way. And one of the things is I started doing online conventions, and I also started to get involved on the editing side of things. As I mentioned, I'm doing some associate editing at Apparition Literary, and I can say we're definitely sick of the pandemic fiction, unfortunately. But I started there a year ago as a slush reader, and it taught me so much about, you know, other people's creativity, what other people are doing, what's happening in the market, since it's a semi-pro magazine, like what themes are fascinating people, what, you know, fantasy creatures are interesting people. I got a whole bunch of stories that's like, you know, someone's in a spaceship all alone, and I was like, well, I feel that.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. I mean, you're reading slush essentially.
Yes.
You know, so you're the first reader. You're seeing what's coming out, and you're a gatekeeper in a good
Yes.
sense of the term. But this has gone on so long that, you know, especially with self-published novels, you know, the fact that we have a very strong self-publishing industry now. You can actually go out to Amazon and buy books that were conceived, written, and published during the pandemic already. And frankly, with it dragging into month 2021 now, soon you're going to be seeing books coming out from more major publishers that were conceived, written during the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see how much the pandemic has really altered the way people are writing and what they're writing about. It is not something I've sat down to try to figure out yet.
It hasn't particularly affected my writing. But part of that's because of what I write. I have, however, been thinking about it, because there are, people, disease is something, is a theme that pretty well vanished from science fiction. The one exception is the type I write, which is alternate history, and there it figures quite prominently in a number of things, because you're dealing with periods in history where disease is still a major function. But there's an interesting theoretical question that has not been resolved and won't be in my lifetime. But when we finally encounter extraterrestrial life, that is life that has evolved completely independently of life on Earth, will we be in any way susceptible to whatever diseases they might have? And on the flip side, can we eat the stuff? No, I mean, maybe we just, you know, there's no law that says DNA has to be made up of the 4 chemicals we use. It could be something different. We use about 20 amino acids, but different, you know, life form could wind up using something quite different. Now, if it is the case that disease transmission is possible between life forms that evolve completely independently of each other. That's going to get really interesting. Because one thing, you probably won't have any immunity against it for a while. And when you do see science fiction deal with disease, every case I can think of is it's catastrophic disease. It's the great epidemic that 90% of the population is wiped out, and so forth. But what I think is probably a lot more likely is the way disease has existed through really all of our history, is that it's mostly endemic. And it just doesn't go away. It comes, it goes, it ebbs, it flows. People in the Middle Ages and early modern period were just accustomed to, you got bubonic plague. That was fairly rare when when it happened, it wasn't rare, but it didn't come by all the time. But you always had typhus, you always had dysentery, you always had all kinds of stuff. The only thing that finally cleaned that up was sewers.
Right.
Is basically what did it.
And even then, I mean, in the early 20th century, there were outbreaks of bubonic plague in Hawaii and New Mexico.
Yeah. Oh, well, they still have it in New Mexico.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Don't go eating any armadillos.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I've never seen a science fiction novel deal with that, where you're dealing with a future world where disease, it's not catastrophic in the sense of killing everybody, but it is, through most of human history, people were just accustomed to half of all children being dead by the time they were 5 years old. They were just used to it. And we are not today. That would be horrendous. Even the poorest countries in the world don't have that kind of child.
right. But we're not that far from it. If you go to any of your local small cemeteries, if you have a small cemetery in your town, you'll see the gravestones where it's a family plot and they have 4 or 5 people who were buried there who died before the age of 3.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, the only thing that really started cutting into it wasn't medicine. It came in the late 19th century, and it really came with social engineering and sanitation. And, plebeian sewers have done a hell of a lot more to keep disease down than all the medicines ever created.
That's why they reversed the flow of the Chicago River, because so many people were getting cholera and typhoid and stuff. So they reversed the flow of the river, so it went away from the lake.
And that way we could really piss off the people in St. Louis. So just
And
bonus.
also so they could die.
Isn't that the dream?
So let's try to move this a little bit back to the putative topic. When you are sitting in your cloistered cell, how do you find inspiration?
I always have, Stephen, I always have trouble with that question. The reason is I know this is going to sound cold-hearted, but if you really have to work really, really hard to figure out a good story, you're probably in the wrong line of work, because it's just something that comes with the territory. There are a lot more stories that I've thought of that I will never write than ones that I will. And a number of them I give to friends of mine, who, hey, I gave rights for the idea for what's become his most popular series. And I don't find that a problem. What I find a problem is more, writing looks easy in a lot of ways it is, but it takes an awful lot of nervous intellectual, emotional energy to write fiction. It really does. It's never easy to get started in the morning. It just isn't, you know, and what I've taught myself over the years is just write a sentence. Just start writing. Just write a goddamn sentence.
Michael?
And that'll start you going. And the funny thing is, there are days when I feel really inspired and it's going great and smoothly, and there are days when writing feels like plowing through mud. But what I have always found is that if you look at that stuff 6 months later, you can't tell the difference.
Okay, so Michael, for you, let me rephrase it a little bit.
Okay.
Because, you know, you said 5 books, 6 books during the pandemic. So on those days when writing is like mud, you know, what were you able to find to push your way through to outside of the bog?
Well, I take a very disciplined approach to my writing, and what Eric was saying too. You know, look for inspiration. I maintain a notebook that I call my idea book, and I write down as an idea will come to me. I'll write it down, maybe a couple sentences about something I want to work on later. And if I'm looking for inspiration, I can always go to that and page through it and try to find things that I've previously thought about. But as far as sitting down to write at the keyboard, I have a goal that I sit down to write 2 pages. That's my goal. I'm going to write 2 pages. And it's because every day you sit down there are going to be some days where you just, like he said, you just don't feel like writing. You just kind of, every word is difficult to produce. So I'll sit down with my goal of I'm going to complete 2 pages. And then at the end of those 2 pages, if things are going, it's flowing, I'm sort of written myself into the mood of writing, then I'll continue. If not, then I'll stop. So, but if you look at it, if you do 2 pages a day, at the end of a year, you'll have a completed novel.
And as somebody at the beginning of her career, how about you? What did you find to push yourself and keep yourself going this past year?
I feel like I've been a little bit of the opposite of Eric, where I'm someone where I need to have a spark of something. I need something to catch my imagination. And I really do have to go looking for that inspiration before I can really write a story, because I've center stories more around, you know, emotions or like a really cool thing I've learned. So I've tried to keep up with, you know, some sort of lay people's like science papers. I'm not going in and reading all the, you know, really difficult parts, but I can read like an abstract, or I can read an article about it of like, you know, this archaeological discovery happened or this scientific discovery happened. And then you sort of push it out from there, where it's like I found out due to the great Carlos Hernandez that rats speak to each other and navigate their world through touch, which is a really incredible way of thinking about things. Is how would you navigate the world like that? How would you think about that? What would, you know, a human society look like with that? How would an alien society look like with that? Is there a fantasy creature that you can, you know, sort of create with that? And how does that break into an idea? How do you push the small thing that you find that really sparks your imagination into something, you know, enormous, and fill in those gaps?
Somebody jump in.
We haven't heard from you.
Oh, right, darn. You noticed that. I mean, part of my thing is I write in a lot of different areas. I mean, I write, you know, for my day job, I'm a writer. I write fiction. We call them proposals. You know, I write fiction, you know, after Hastings, short stories, things like that. Last year, I actually had 2 short stories and the novel come out. This year, I have some stuff in the pipeline, but nothing's actually going to be coming out this year, fiction-wise. But then I also write nonfiction, reviews, essays. I just published a fanzine where Evan Reeves, who's the chair of this convention, and I co-edited it with Chris Garcia and James Bacon, where we invited people to write about their favorite TV show that was canceled after 2 seasons or fewer. And that was a lot of fun, you know, and it helped spark my creativity and got me going. Also caused me to watch some really bad television. But you know, it was great because in addition to regular fans of the shows, we had one showrunner write about his show. Bryce Zabel wrote about the show Dark Skies for that. We had 2 screenwriters write about shows that they worked on. Michael Cassett wrote about a show called Strange Luck. And Margaret Dunlap wrote about a show called The Middleman, which was her first professional credit. And we had Rob Sawyer write about the show Flash Forward, which was based on his novel. So, we brought that out last month and, or no, actually this month, and it was a lot of fun. And, it was something that a year ago I hadn't even really considered doing, and, it just kind of came up. So I saw a hand. I could do a whole panel on.
On what?
And just do something extra after work because my life wasn't the same job I did before. And most of my social activities were kind of online anyway. It's going to continue to affect things for a long time. And of course, everybody has their own limits and what they're prepared for. On the one hand, you have people, I know people who still are living the way they were living 18 months ago when we were at the height of lockdown. And they won't go out, they won't socialize with people outside. And I know people who refuse to believe that that the pandemic is serious at all. They won't wear masks if they, they refuse to get the shot, and they just live their life as if it was 2019. And frankly, as long as we have people in that latter category around, the pandemic's going to stretch on. And you have to decide for yourself, as Eric pointed out, at what point are you comfortable with whatever that current normal is? You have both of your shots, you have your booster shot. So you know that if you get it, you're unlikely to wind up in the hospital. You're unlikely to, we think at this point, to have long-term ramifications from getting it if you have all your vaccinations. Are you comfortable with that? And for everybody, that's a different answer. My wife and I are struggling with it because we know where we are, and we see people who we like and we trust who are more liberal in their policies about how they're handling it. They're going out to dinner. I ate in a restaurant twice in the last 20 months. It was both times was early July when there was a dip in COVID cases. I had my 2 vaccines. In both cases, I was socially distanced from other diners, and it was a work thing in both cases. I haven't eaten in a restaurant since, and I don't really have any real desire. I have a desire to, but I'm not planning on it because that's the comfort level that my wife and I have. We've eaten in outside dining places, but even then, it depends on what the current levels of transmission are in the area that we are and where we are. My wife and I just did a driving trip in downstate Illinois, where the numbers are way higher than they are up here. And essentially, we were doing, we would go through a drive-through, masked up, and we would not, eat in the car. We would have as little interaction with people as we possibly could, because it's part of the state where people are not getting vaccinated, and they're not wearing masks, and there is a high transmission rate. So it's going to affect things for a lot longer.
Sort of jumping off of that as well, I do think that, whether or not the pandemic finally ends, which who knows, the effects of it are going to last for a long time. I think that, to be a little bit more grim, like, a serious mental health crisis, people with long COVID, it's like the world is really going to be affected and changed by that. And that's why I like having this panel talking about inspiration, talking about creativity, because I think that we have to hold on to that. And we also have to learn, new strategies for it. And we also have to learn how to protect it. Like it's okay if you don't write for a little while because you need to take care of yourself. If your subconscious needs to be working on something else, if you need to be learning and growing in a different way, and then you come back to it better and fuller. I think that this is here to stay. And I think a lot of us are probably, work from home people who are more introverts who, a lot of our interaction was online anyway. I know mine was. And so the pandemic didn't really change things normal day to day, but it put an enormous new mental load on us, and the way that we had to navigate the world, and the way that we felt safe in the world, safe in our own houses, safe around people that we loved. And I do think that's going to keep affecting us, and that we have to yeah, find new ways to deal with that, whether that's through a creative outlet or whether that's through self-care, because the work will still be there. It's okay.
One of the things that interested me about this topic is what I discovered during the pandemic, and like everybody else goes to working from home, there are lots of people. Is I was finding that it's very focus on things because I call it pandemic brain because it seems like there's so many other things that demanded my attention, even though I wasn't doing as much.
Well, I think Michael, kind of addressed that, at least the way he dealt with it, where you have your routine, and this is writing time, this is creativity time, whatever. And we're talking about writing because all four of us are authors.
Mhm.
But creativity is also painting. It's needlepoint. It's cooking. Like I said earlier, it's anything that is an output for you. No, and so whatever you're doing that is originating within yourself is creativity. And with luck, everybody got to have that experience either on a daily basis while they were shut in at home during the pandemic, or every few days that they got to do something that allowed something inside of them to come out, and not just be a pair of eyes and a pair of ears listening to the television, watching TV, reading a book. But it's a two-way process, and with luck, you found a way to have something come out of you.
I know. I didn't find that particularly a problem or difficult, but I think you gotta understand, I've been writing full-time since September of 1999. That's a long time. And for 20 years, every morning when I wake up, I have the delightful thought that I don't have to do a damn thing today. Because I don't have a time clock. I don't have a boss. The publisher is not a boss. The publisher is basically as a contractor, they're contracting you to write a novel. My publisher has no idea what I'm doing from one day to the next, or even from 1 week, or even 1 month to the next.
Well, to be fair, neither does my boss.
Huh?
My boss has no idea what I'm doing either.
No, yeah, no, it's not the only job like that, but that's great from the point of view of my wife has a real job and she has to deal with asshole bosses, which I can remember what that was like. And it's really aggravating and it takes up a lot of energy. I don't have to deal with that. But the downside of it is you really have to be very self-disciplined because there's nothing external that makes you go to work today. It's kind of like the problem I had quitting smoking, which was I knew I had to quit. But I didn't have to quit today, and that's what makes it so tough. Well, over the years, I just learned how to deal with that. And having had the delightful thought that I don't have to do anything today if I don't want to, I almost invariably will go to work unless there's something going on. My wife and I are going somewhere to something else. But basically, it helps that I like what I do, obviously. But, it's something you have to have it or you have to learn it, or both. In my case, it was both. It's a very high degree of self-discipline. And if you've already got 20 years of that built up, I didn't find the pandemic particularly hard on me. It was, I used to joke about it and tell people, well, sheltering in place is pretty much what I've done for 20 years. I mean, it's not like it's some big new deal to me. But if you don't have that kind of long experience with it, or you've had to sort of train yourself basically to do it, I can tell you it's going to be tough because it's a huge change in your life. It really is. I mean, it doesn't necessarily seem like much, but when when you really consider the impact it has on you emotionally, and it's even worse for people who have things, depression,
Mhm.
if you add in something else to it, it's even worse. But like I said, I don't want to go through another one. I really don't.
Just really curious if you guys felt as artists and as consumers of art that there was a shift in your sort of what the genres, what mediums were really drawn to before the pandemic, and if it started kind of as we're like shifting into different headspaces for your day jobs and day-to-day life, if there are other genres or mediums that are starting to speak to you more. And just that I'm not quite sure, I was going to talk about like what you did before.
I started watching a lot of horror, which I
Really?
did not do before. Yes, actually, I found it was really cathartic. I found it, yeah, I believe a lot in catharsis and being able to sort of expend like these sort of deep emotions in a more healthy way. I also, though, I am the biggest coward in the room, so it did not help my sleep. But I started watching a lot of horror. I started watching more sci-fi. I was very much a sort of fantasy person before that, but I think my through line through all of this has been sort of like, I really tried to spread myself out and fan myself out. I wanted to talk a little bit to the pandemic brain too, because I certainly have felt the pandemic brain. I'm very jealous of you, Eric, and your self-discipline, because I'm still learning. I'm still Padawan of that discipline. And so I also tried to challenge myself to write in different genres or to write in different forms, like, try to write a play, try to write more poetry, try to write, as if you're doing poetry, like a really strict form that really forces you to make this into more of a puzzle so that it becomes less, I need to sit down and write and just push something out, to here's a goal that I've set for myself creatively to push myself to become a better artist and to, develop myself further more interestingly.
In my case, I think I wound up reading less than I normally do and watching more television. And part of that was my wife was around all the time as opposed to working from her office, which she no longer has to do anyway. And she always has a TV on if she's working. And it drives me nuts. I'm the kind of person who, if there's a TV on, even if it's something that I have absolutely no desire in, it draws my attention.
Me too.
And so, when I work, I'll turn on, if I remember to, I'll turn on some music, but not the TV. But with the TV on constantly, I started to watch more things, and that cut into my reading time, which I kind of begrudge. It gave me time with my wife, but it was time sitting with her watching TV, not really talking or doing anything. And plus my daughter was also home. We had been empty nesters. Both of our daughters were off of college. Obviously, they both came home for the end of 2020, the spring 2020 season, seminar session, whatever term. It's been a long time. And then my older daughter graduated at the end of that year. And so she wound up, we're calling it our bonus year with her because we had expected her to graduate and move up, and move on. And instead she graduated and moved in with us for a year, which honestly, it was great, to have her around. She's now moved out again. We're back to being empty nesters, and we're trying to figure out how that works also, in addition to the whole how do you live when you're not going out to movies and restaurants and things like that.
How do you feel with respect to your creative person? You mentioned your reading habits and discipline. I read mostly on a Kindle and has that reading tracker to tell me how many days in a row. And I feel that most of the reading I've done since quarantine started has been because I wanted to keep my track of it. The only day it missed was when I went to Capricorn in 2020 for 15 and only missed the days because of Happy Hotel Internet registered days of time. But that only is very much enough to give me discipline. And is that something similar to that, like someone else tracking how many days you're doing something?
Not for me. For me, it's more the fact that, as a book reviewer, books are constantly coming into the house. And my goal is to eventually see my nightstand again. And since right now, the bottom book on the nightstand is a 900, I think it's 900, might be 1,000-page book on the discoveries that New Horizons has made of Pluto, which is not written for the layman. That one's going to take me a while to get through. So,
I've read fewer books this year than last year. At least I'm not trained or I can read.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think part of it also gets back to pandemic brain. You know, my concentration hasn't been, necessarily where I want it to be. So I'll read a chapter, whereas I used to read 5 or 6 chapters in that time. I'll start reading the chapter and I'll pick up my phone or my iPad or something like that to check email. And, next thing you know, it's 3 hours later and I haven't done anything really. So at some point the reading will take center stage again, I'm sure.
I'm a big fan of group accountability for that. So start a book club. I started a writing group with, a bunch of my friends who also graduated, from college in the last couple of years during the pandemic, because I was like, I will write, but I need someone to tell me to do it. I need to say, I will have a chapter to you by the end of next week. So and I've also had trouble reading for the same reason. I've been mostly reading short fiction online because a book has been really difficult for me to tackle. But if you have some other people who read, or there's so many people here, or that get people together, be like, we're going to read this book together because you're going to like it.
Okay, so we have time for
Yeah.
one last question, I think.
Darkness and escapism. Do I tell dark, uncomfortable stories that deal with me? Or do I tell stories about like somewhere else entirely where things are going to be okay? And one feels too heavy, one feels too frivolous, and one is creating nothing because my fit. I'm wondering
Well, part of my way of dealing with stress is humor. Part of my way of dealing with just about everything is humor. And actually, right after this, I'm going to be doing a reading. It's of a story that I wrote prior to the pandemic. It was published in 2018, 2019. It was published a couple of years ago that became very applicable once the pandemic happened. And so if you want, after this, you can go over to Lilac and you can hear me read that. But yeah, I tend to use humor to deal with anything stressful or non-stressful or anything really, which isn't to say that everything I write is humorous, but there's always some humor in things that I write, including those proposals that I mentioned earlier.
Michael?
Yeah, I think, there's room for both, actually. Shakespeare wrote tragedies, and he wrote comedies and history. So I think, whatever is taking your attention at the time, maybe, devote your creative efforts into that project. And then, but don't necessarily limit yourself to just writing one thing. You can, some idea might be better suited for something lighter, as you said.
I think both of those things are very relevant, the catharsis and the escapism. I was talking about watching a lot of horror as sort of a catharsis measure, but at the same time, I'm also watching a lot of rom-coms. I think that, what is taking your attention, like Michael was saying, go with that. Don't worry about it being too painful or too frivolous. People need both of those things. We contain multitudes, and we need those facets to reflect that.
And I think part of it is decide what's going to do you the best good to write.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to get out? And with that being said, I would like to thank the panelists for the last 50 minutes. I would like to thank the audience for coming and listening to us blather on for the last 50 minutes. I hope you all got something out of it, and I hope you have a great convention. And it's great to see people again.
I would like to thank Stephen for being the moderator anyway.
I wasn't the moderator.
He was drafted.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew you'd do it.
I've done it many times. Thank you. Did you publish which I've read a couple also.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen you there.
It's been last time I read was 2018.
I think, yeah, I probably missed that. Yeah. I think I graduated since then.
Understand.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here.
I love your perspective on everything.
You have your books here?
My personal copies. They're anthologies that I can keep.
I'm sure, I think you told yourself, these two stories were most online.
I think so, like a long time ago, probably right when I was out of college. But these are my first paid ones.
Oh, that's good.
I don't have extra copies. I didn't get any. So maybe another time. See you around. It's really nice to meet you.
It's all right. He only wanted his machete. Jason X is the best of those movies. That's not even an opinion. That's just a statement of fact. Yep. But also Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I can't say New Nightmare is the best Nightmare movie. It is the Nightmare movie with the best payoff. You have to watch 7 movies for it to make sense. But Jason X is unequivocally the best Friday the 13th. I haven't seen the new Halloween yet. It's only in theaters. I'm not even sure I'm willing to go into a theater for the new Resident Evil. Yeah, welcome to Raccoon City. Really? During a goddamn global pandemic, welcome to Raccoon City. Really? Oh, the last 2 Resident Evil movies, I was the only person in the theater, and that was before there was a global pandemic. So I'm actually not super concerned that I would be in like an Eternals level release group. But it's not the only point in going to the movies. There are 2 points. No one can call you for 2 hours, so you actually get to watch a movie all the way through with an excuse to turn off your phone, and you get to eat popcorn. So if I can't eat popcorn, why? Why bother? There is no point to this. There are 2 movie theaters near me that are covered by vaccination mandates. One of them has a mask at all times, no eating or drinking in the theater rule. So depending on which theater gets Resident Evil, like if I have to have a mask mandate and get my temperature taken, I damn well want to be the only person in that auditorium, and I want a bucket of popcorn. I was just so vehement about that, I broke a nail. I really love Resident Evil movies. We've not actually started yet. I'm just having opinions about horror movies. That's when the difference between that and the panel is that when I'm just having opinions about horror movies, you don't get to ask me questions unless I want you to. The difference between the white mask and the black mask is that the white mask is slightly smaller and popped off my face, so I swapped to the black mask while I was drinking my coffee. You will periodically throughout the weekend see people slipping me packs of magic cards, and that's because they don't want me to kill you all. But the pack I was just given had a splendid reclamation in it, which is a green rare from the new Crimson Vow set that has My Girl Red in the art, so I'm happy about that. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ha ha. Oh yeah, no, my Ren 7 deck is going to murder people. Awesome. I haven't seen it because I hadn't heard it marketed as a horror movie. And also, I believe it's still theaters only. Prettiest horror movie I've seen in a long time is Anna and the Apocalypse. Just the cinematography on that was gorgeous. Whether it's a horror movie or not is negotiable. But movie is beautiful. Good morning. It is 11 a.m. That means I now have to talk to y'all, which I was doing anyway. So yay for non-onerous burdens. I'm Shannon McGuire. This is my Ask Me Anything. There is a large table at the front of the stage, so I can't pace like I normally do. So I'm sitting here like everyone's least favorite college professor. The way that this works is you ask me questions and I will answer them. If you don't ask me questions, I'll just talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Normally in the past, that has been Pokemon. Right now, it is likely to be Magic the Gathering. You may or may not actually enjoy that. So please ask me questions. Yes. Curious about everybody's favorite cryptid that AC applies. Were those partly inspired by neither. So old white dudes, for the most part, do not inspire a lot for me. Literally, I just didn't read most of them. I read Stephen King, but he doesn't fall into quite the same era of old white dude as Paul Anderson and Gordy Dickinson. He's an old white dude now. He wasn't when I was a kid. Tanya Huff wrote an absolutely fantastic trilogy, The Keeper Chronicles, Summon the Keeper. What's the second book? And then A Long Hot Summons. And in the first of those, there are multicolored mice that wear tri-corner hats that live in the walls of the house, and they rescue the cat after he is injured. And I thought the mice were great and that Tanya had not done enough with these tiny mice that clearly worship the cat as a god, since they're carrying through on a palanquin at one point. So I asked her if I could have them. And she said she wasn't using them for anything, so I took off with them. They're not Technicolor anymore. They don't wear tri-corner hats, but they were very much inspired by Tanya Huff's little mice in the Keeper Chronicles. That is, yes. Oh, the thylacine. So we had a semi-authenticated sighting last year, shortly after the start of COVID, which was a big deal. It kicked up a lot of fuss in the cryptozoological community. Did we finally find the thylacine? I remain firmly on the side of the thylacine is still out there. There's a lot of Tasmania, and we just have not located it yet. Thank you, my darling. But we did not locate one based on that footage. They are still not confirmed as extant. Part of why we're looking so hard right now, even though to a certain degree, we don't want to find them. As long as we haven't found them, no one's fucking with them. Once we find them, people will want to fuck with them. There are people who will want to own one as a pet. There are people that will desperately want to hunt one. There are people who will want to grind them up and use them as impotency drugs. We know these things because we've met humans. However, as long as we don't know that they're still out there, we also can't protect them. If we're able to prove that they are there, we can get some incredibly stringent anti-trafficking laws in place around the thylacine. So we are still looking, but part of the urgency right now is that they are genetically extremely similar to the Tasmanian devil. They are very, very closely related. And that means that spillover viruses between species are very likely. And given that the Tasmanian devil population is being ravaged by metastatic facial tumors that are passed orally, there is a chance that we could lose all the thylacines before we even know they were out there to be lost. That is the two parts of the disclaimer I didn't get to before people took me up on Ask Me Questions. One, I am going to swear a lot. It is weird as shit that they have this at 11 a.m. because, oh my God, normally our big recommendation is please don't put me before the watershed. I am going to say words some of these people have never fucking heard before. And the second part is whatever you ask me, I will answer. That includes things you may or may not actually want answered. I had someone come to one of these things and think that he was being very clever. And when I said, I will answer anything, he said, how many yeast infections have you had in your life? And what he received as a response was a 10-minute lecture on systemic misogyny and a number. So if these are not things that you want, don't ask them. Oh, it was hilarious. I have very rarely seen a teenage boy turn that red. Because he really he thought he had a gotcha. He's like, I'm going to ask this and she's going to be embarrassed. And I'm like, nope, let me tell you about my vagina.
No teenage boy wants to know that exists.
Yep. Not in that context and not attached to a woman over 25. So these are the parts of the disclaimer you didn't get. You do actually have to ask me questions. My girlfriend is in the room and will ask me questions as a ringer, but she is likely right now to go back to the Magic the Gathering questions because she's one of the people slipping me packs throughout the weekend. So I do not need one right now, but thank you, my darling. Yes.
So my favorite of your series, I've read many of them, but my favorite have to be the Wait Children books. And I was wondering if you've given any thought as to where your door would lead you.
I think it's inevitable that I would, but I also feel like that is a very private thing. So I know where I would go if I had a door. I also know that I don't tell people where I would go if I had a door, because we have a tendency as fans to self-organize into worlds. You know, we want to know where does our door go? Would we be sorted into Dauntless or Allegiant? Would we be here? Would we be there? And then we want to share that information. And sometimes that information is great to share. And sometimes it's like, well, you're filling out your security questions for the world. But I'm glad you like them. I like them too. Yes.
On this off the subject of your current books, but has the pandemic affected how you wrote your books, or just generally how you have a worldview about it?
Well, I have a lot less optimism towards humans at this point. My God, you'd think that being from the Columbine generation, I would already have lost all of my optimism toward humans when we kept not stopping school shootings, but I kept holding on to tiny fragments of it because I was literally born the day after smallpox eradication was declared complete. Like, I came into a world where we had decided pandemics were things that we put in history books and we weren't assholes about them. I knew that we had a Calvinist view of medical history. I didn't realize that we would wear our eugenicism on our sleeves with pride. So I have a lot less optimism about humans, but as to how I write my books, it happens the exact way it always has. I sit down, I write a book. I was actually just telling my friend Will that I'm having a fight. It's a very small and non-consequential fight, but I'm having a fight with a Kickstarter that I backed shortly before the start of COVID, because they have not delivered the book that they promised me. And, I wrote them and said, hey, I know that Kickstarters can take time, but when am I going to get my book? And in one of those extraordinarily rare moments of, I don't think you realize who I am, they responded to me with, you have to understand, it's been very difficult for people to create during a pandemic. You need to have empathy for our writers. And I'm like, your fucking writers could not finish a single D&D adventure in a year. I have written 11 books. No. But so if anything, I'm grateful that my job means that I disassociate for money. I tell people it is literally my job to enter a disassociative state for 8 hours a day and just stay there. And while I'm doing that, COVID is not a factor. You know, I'm in a different reality and I'm happy there.
So you don't see it coming into any of your work?
It might in some of the things that are present tense. It really depends. You know, I watch a lot of medical dramas. I love medical dramas. And some of them incorporated COVID 100% during the 2020 television season. And sometimes that really sucked. Grey's Anatomy was a miserable slog. I don't think anyone is rewatching this last season for comfort. And sometimes they dealt with it for a little while and then they pulled out of it and said, we have decided, because we are a medical world where doctors find out that racial injustice exists in medicine and they fix it. Doctors are respectful to trans people. We can clone livers. We can do anything. We cured fucking COVID. Leave us alone. And they have little disclaimers at the start of the episode saying we are imagining a post-COVID future. And it works for those stories. So I think I will wind up incorporating COVID in places where it works and makes sense. And some of my short fiction has already referenced, you know, the COVID pandemics of the 2020s. But I'm having trouble seeing. Okay, so this is awful, but even though I should have seen it coming because it happened in the 1918 flu, it happened during the eradication of smallpox, it happened during the initial rounds of vaccination against smallpox, we have always politicized diseases. We have always tried to say, as a species, that diseases are targeting the people who deserve to get them. We have always done this. It is a 100% human trait. During the 1918 flu, we literally had people holding masks of the Red Death. Edgar Allan Poe wrote that story for a reason. People think if they're rich enough and pious enough that they will be immune. And that is not how it works. That has never been how it works. And yet somehow I was still surprised and am still surprised on an ongoing basis by how much we have politicized a disease. I don't actually care what your personal politics are. I will tell you to wear a mask. My mother takes this as an assault on her freedoms. My own mother thinks that I am telling her that she is politically flawed when I say put a damn mask on. I say I'm immunosuppressed and you have an airborne disease. We all breathe the same oxygen, but we have somehow made this a political matter. So even in fiction that is not meant to be political, if I talk about pandemics and the way they were eradicated or anything like that, suddenly I'm pushing a left-wing agenda. I'm pushing a lot of left-wing agendas. Let's practice basic epidemiological science is not a left-wing agenda. It's a let's not all fucking die agenda. So, yes. I have no idea. So mass market paperbacks don't really make money anymore. And I believe a lot of the big publishers are starting to move away from the mass market paperback form. Yeah, I wasn't given a choice on the trade paperback thing. I didn't actually know that they had settled on the trade paperback thing until that was how it showed up on Amazon. And that means that sadly, I really don't know. I wish I did. So frequently this information is either not given to authors or is given to authors after it's given to you. I have found out about things from Q&As. My favorite was where I found out from a Q&A that they were bundling all 3 of the original Newsflesh books in one volume. Because I did not think that was a good idea. I still don't think it was a good idea. I think it was a very, very bad idea. And I said some swears that got back to my publisher, and my publisher was not amused. They were like, what the fuck? Why are you questioning our business decisions on a public forum? Well, why the frickety frockety fuckety didn't you tell me about your business decisions in a private forum? Contracts allow our publishers to package and repackage work within a certain number of formats, and that frequently does include omnibus editions. They just don't usually exercise the omnibus right while the book is still making money. Yes. So as an author, I am supposed to pretend that I do everything for the love of the story and that everything is about this magical, mythical, artistic ideal. Why can't I work for love and exposure? So this dress cost money. And this bra cost money. And this mask cost money. And this soda cost money. And my hotel room cost money. And my cat food cost money. And my mortgage costs money. I have to do things for money. Money is great. I love money. I would be perfectly happy if we declared a holiday where everybody just gave me money. That would be the best day. January 5th is my birthday, just saying. And so, you know, I will tell people when there are sales and the like, even though a book sale does mean I make less money per copy, because if I sell 6 copies at a lower cover rate, I still make money and can still feed my cats. In the case of the Newsflash books, the 3 books each retailed for $10, and all 3 of them were still selling and making money. And then my publisher said, we could probably make more money right now today if we bundled them all up as one omnibus. The omnibus retails for $24. I still get the same percentage of the cover price. So I get less money from the same number of book sales. What's more, the cover on, and this is where we get to the creative stuff, the cover on the omnibus is crappy. The cover on the omnibus looks like a bad teen romance. The Newsflash books, if you have not read them, are a post-zombie apocalyptic pandemic thriller series. They are about Sean and Georgia Mason, who are news reporters that work in the field with zombies. Georgia explicitly has extremely short hair. Looking around here, I think that this person in the front row has the closest to Georgia's actual haircut of anyone in the room. There is nothing to grab. You are not grabbing hold of Georgia. And Sean is a professional zombie hunter. So on the cover, Georgia's hair is about as long as mine and flowing in the wind. And she's wearing a lace shirt. And Sean is wearing a hoodie that cuts off his peripheral vision. And this is the cover after I threw 3 dozen fits and got it put through revisions. So I have creative issues because I don't like it when covers lie to readers. And I really enjoy eating. And I get in trouble with social media if I go on social media and say, hey, I like to eat. Could you buy the more expensive edition? Because I am also a reader. I grew up super poor. I grew up on welfare. I understand that we don't have infinite money for books. And if I have a choice between one $20 book or 2 $10 books, I will almost always take the 2 $10 books, whether or not they were written by the same author. Yes. Oh, my favorite cover. I really, really like the cover for Velveteen Versus Volume 2 because it's the beautiful broken mirror with all of the different iterations of Velveteen. But sadly, and this is one of those things I'm probably not supposed to admit to, I think my favorite cover to anything I've written is the cover to Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider issue number 4, where it's just Gwen perching on a tombstone. There's no superhero action. It's this incredibly bleak image. She's in a graveyard full of dead spiders. I fought for that cover. My editor went to bat for that cover because it's gripping. It's a beautiful image, but it's not the sort of splashy iconographic thing that they want. They want superheroes punching superheroes on every single book cover. And that is probably my single favorite cover image. Yes. We have a book coming in 2022. It's called Seasonal Fears. It is a sidequel rather than a sequel, as in we're not following the exact same characters, but we are in the same world. And that is partially because if you've read Middle Game, you realize that those characters at the end of that book, they've got some shit to work through. They are not the most exciting place. Like, they need therapy. And there are no therapists available for their problems. So they're just going to get to sit with that for a while. It is the Seasonal Monarchs book I've been threatening to write for a long, long time. If you are someone that used to follow my live journal where we had the current projects posts every month, that's the book that used to be called Pretty Poison Apples. And so it's basically the Winter Queen and the Summer King and a whole bunch of chaos. And the cover is really pretty and I like it a lot. And we got Amber Benson back to do the audiobook, which I'm super excited about, which I'm partially excited about because I'm a jerk. So part of the book takes place in Alabama. And there are characters in that part of the book that are from Alabama. So they naturally have Alabama accents, which Amber is going to do for the book. And I am really excited to watch people yell at Amber for making fun of the South. She's from Alabama. That's literally what she sounds like when she's not pretending to be Californian. And I like watching people get mad at things that they don't actually have the authority to get mad about, because I'm a dick. Yeah. You know, I think that if it's a passion, you're not going to be able to not follow through on it. Whether becoming a professional author is a good idea or not, I don't know. Like, I literally don't, in part because they do these things at these cons where they'll have, let's talk about breaking into professional authordom. And half the panel is people who did it before I was born. And they're talking about how you broke in the 50s and 60s. And it's not how you break in today. Well, I broke in 2009, and that's not how you break in today. I don't actually know how you break in today. I have no idea. I can polish my crystal ball and stare at it and say, well, that happened. And then go off to open some more magic cards. I think if you're going to write, you're going to write. I think it is easier to get your work out than it ever has been before, but it is harder to actually get eyes on your work than it ever has been before. We have a very wide exposure pool right now and a very narrow funnel. I think it is deeply frustrating to be an author right now because you will see everything amplified by the speed of social media. Every time, all the time. So much of it is what hits, what gets people's attention, what do people get excited about, what does your publisher decide to push, what goes where, do you find a publisher? Did you make a mistake that no one told you was a mistake that now all of social media is trying to eat your flesh for? So I don't know. It's very visible. People will assume that you have a lot more power than you do, but I think that part has always been true. I say if you want to do it, go for it. You'll never regret it if you don't do it. Yeah.
Given how fragile your ego is. It's sarcasm. Pay much attention to social media.
So my ego is actually extraordinarily fragile in the sense that I do have rejection sensitive dysphoria. I take cruel comments very much to heart. I have things people said 10 years ago still echoing in my skull, and parts of it I can never stop taking personally, ever, ever, ever. I am a larger woman. I don't think you can look at me and not see that. And I actually get reviewed more harshly than my thin peers by people that have seen me in person. And that sounds like I'm so vain. I really think this song is about me, but I've had people review the information and they can verify it. Like, this is an accurate and observable phenomenon. We had a San Diego Comic-Con several years ago where I did a panel with a bunch of other authors and Patrick Rothfuss. And I always make about this level of effort for conventions. I'll put on a clean top at the very minimum. You may not like it, but you can definitely say it does not have my breakfast on it. I will brush my hair. I will put on mascara with a lot of swearing. I'm not perfect, but I'm at least clearly making an effort. Pat showed up for this panel wearing his breakfast. You could tell what he had eaten because it was down the front of his shirt. His hair had not been brushed. His beard looked like it had eaten a small child on the way to the panel. A blogger took a picture of the panel, put it on their blog, and captioned it, "The distinguished Mr. Rothfuss and the cheerfully obese Miss McGuire." Pat Rothfuss is the same size I am, if not bigger. He's a foot taller, but he's about 80 pounds heavier. Like, this was not me next to Kieran Gillen, who is a stick. This was two fat people, one of whom has brushed her hair this year, and one of whom is a cis guy with a penis. Hey. And he gets a lot more credit for bothering to put on pants than I did for putting on pantyhose. And that is standard. I cannot not see those things. I cannot not hear those things. I don't want to. Part of the trick is just deciding to say fuck you loudly enough that I continue doing what I'm doing, whether or not people approve of it. I have learned to be violently myself. I am not everybody's cup of tea. I am not even always the cup of tea of the people who genuinely know and love me. There are some people in this room that have known me for many, many years, and their tolerance for listening to me talk about my My Little Pony collection is not endless. it's not even halfway to endless. There is a certain point at which they just start throwing things and trying to get out of the room. And that point comes long before I run out of ponies. So I think the trick really is, if you want your ego to stay intact, figure out who you are, figure out what parts of it you're willing to let other people change, and then just tell them to fuck right the fuck off for any of the parts that they don't like. And commentary on my writing, it depends on the commentary. I try not to read too many reviews because by the time you're reviewing it, it's too late. Like, the book is out there. What do you want me to do? There is not much I can do. If I hear a consistent complaint, I do attempt to address it. Some of the complaints are not things I can address necessarily. I really love TV tropes. I read TV tropes because it tells me whether or not I'm doing something consistently wrong. It will start hitting on your narrative tics and the things you repeat over and over again. And like, is this moving from being a trope you like into a fetish? And, you know, I like to know what my fetishes are. I like it when other people point them out to me. And if it's not my therapist, I don't have to pay for it. So, hey, information. But a lot of the commentary that people really feel the need to make sure I hear, the stuff that people must bring to me, is stuff I can ignore. Like, did you know you've got all these queers in your work? Cool. I am personally offended by the grammatical inaccuracy of the singular they. Well, you know, Shakespeare is personally offended by your face. So, you mentioned Harry Potter in this book, and that makes me uncomfortable as a trans person. I am very sorry that you have been hurt because the world is unkind and cruel. The book was published in 2003. I'm not really sure what you wanted me to do about that. Which is one that I encountered recently. You say that white people should not use this slur. Well, I found your high school literary magazine from 1994, and you used that slur in a poem. That is correct. That slur is actively connected to my racial background, as I have discussed in these 87 places. And when I was a teenager, I felt that even though I am fully white passing, I was allowed to reclaim it. And the people that want to do that sort of thing are usually bringing you complaints that you can cheerfully ignore. If it's something bigger than that, your editors or somebody that actually you trust will eventually bring it to you directly. Now, there are complaints I get that are fair complaints, but I don't really see how I'm supposed to fix them. You know, one of the things that I saw on TV tropes recently that gnawed at me and is still gnawing at me was somebody going, well, you know, Shannon has given the straight members of the encrypted cast relationships, but even though she has verified that James is a gay man, he doesn't have a boyfriend. Why doesn't he have a boyfriend? He needs to get a boyfriend. She has said here in this interview that she is not comfortable forcing that, but he should have a boyfriend. And she's written relationships with these other combinations of people that are not her sexual and gender orientation. So she should be able to do this. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't write sex. It makes me really uncomfortable. I don't like it. It's not fun for me. And I'm doing this to have fun, at least on some level. But with queer relationships, especially, you'll get people saying it's not really queer if they're not banging on page. I'm not writing two gay men having sex. I'm sorry. I'm not writing two gay women having sex. I'm not writing two straight people having sex. I'm writing people going into a room, throwing a sack of fried chicken to some mice and closing the door. If that's not good enough for you, it's not going to happen. But also, James has only been with the family for 2 books. He's not a born Healy. He is a speed run to adoption. I'm not going to force a relationship that hasn't been set up yet. So when he gets his book, he'll get his relationship. But if your problem is that I haven't written a gay male relationship in this series yet, I can't fix it. It's a valid complaint. Doesn't make it a thing that I can go, oh, it's fixed. Yes. So I have discovered that for me, and this may not be how, no 2 people work exactly alike. Even 2 people that are in the same working style will not work exactly alike. But for me, I can write X number of words per day comfortably. So I can do X number of words per day sustainably forever. If I want to do more than that, I'm moving into pushing myself and I will eventually need to take time off. But I can just do X number consistent cruising speed. If I switch what I'm working on midway through the day, I can do X plus 1. So that's normally how is I'll work on the long form project in the morning and that gets X number of words. Then I'll take lunch and then I'll come back to my computer and I'll do +1 on a short form project. And so they're running at the same time. And that resets my brain. It lets me be creative in a different area. It lets me work on a different theme. And I can't do X plus 1 consistently on a single project. That takes us into burnout zone. I say it's your comfortable cruising speed. Maybe your comfortable cruising speed is 100 words every 3 days. Maybe it's 1,000 words a day. Maybe you're Catherine Valenti and it's 15,000 words a day every 6 months. And the rest of the time you lay face down on your living room floor. Not an inaccurate representation of her workflow at one time. So you've just got to figure that out for yourself. And then you'll be able to figure out where the balances are between the long and short. I try never to be working on too long or too short at the same time because themes, as you say, they develop at different speeds in different works. You don't want to get too in your face instantaneously with the theme in the long work because now you have to sustain that for 100,000 words. Good fucking luck. But you also don't want to be too subtle or take too long in the short work. Because if you've only got 6,000 words before that's supposed to be done and turned in, if your theme doesn't show up until word 4,000, your story sucks. Sometimes themes do not do what you think they're going to do. I just finished a novella that was supposed to be a big anti-vaccination metaphor. It turned into a climate change metaphor halfway through. I think that's what it wanted to be from the beginning, and I'm currently revising it to bring that forth from the start. But the themes will go where they want. So just figure out your workflow. It's kind of like, I know you're an artist. If you're working on a big painting, you need to give it some time to dry, but that doesn't mean that your creative well is done for the day. So maybe do your big painting and then go do some sketches. And that's kind of the long form, short form for me. Yeah. Morning in Paris. I would rather gargle wasps than write an entire novel in the second person. Oh my God. You have literally just caused me to have stomach cramps with that sentence. Take it back. Take it back. For those who are not aware, the first person is I did. I am sitting on this panel. The third person, or omniscient third, which are two slightly different things, are Shannon is sitting. Shannon was sitting at the panel. I watched Shannon sitting. We're back to first person. Second person is you. You sat on the panel. You talked to the people. And it can come off as almost aggressive if not handled correctly. I have seen very little second person that did not make me murderous. Norman Partridge wrote an absolutely beautiful second person intro to his short novel Halloween Season that began with "You have been here before." And it's almost fairy tale-esque because it's setting up the scene and bringing you into this situation, into this harvest. And that made it feel very immediate. And that's a good use of second person. Stephen King lapses briefly into the second person at the end of It, when he says, look back upon the children silhouetted golden in the sun, and is suddenly addressing the reader as a part of the story. And that's a way to incorporate it that can have a good flow and not come off as weird. It's very popular right now on Tumblr and Wattpad for UX/stories, so Loki/reader, where Loki strokes your hair. Like, no, he fucking does not. I hit the back button. Bye-bye. I'm going back to my first person world. But experimentation is vital. I just think if you are an author and you want to experiment that dramatically with form, start a new series. Do something outside your main series because people have legitimate expectations. We like to make fun of the patterns that we see because we like to feel smart. And it makes us feel smart when we can say, oh, of course it's a Law and Order episode. There's a dead chick in Central Park. But if there's not a dead chick in Central Park, we feel a little cheated. We want our medical drama at some point to include somebody shouting a term that we get to feel smart for understanding. We want someone to wear a white coat. You know, these are things that we want. We want to see those things. A doctor has literally just walked into the room and is now laughing at me behind his mask. Go get your white coat, fucker. I'm in a medical drama. That's fair. That is fair, though we're in the middle of a pandemic. So if you got a white coat now, you could probably make half this room cry. That is my power. It's true. We like the patterns. We like to see the things. And even as we say that we want new and innovation, we don't. We want a certain level of comfort. It's what makes genres appealing. You know, we get mad when you go too far off our expectations. And that makes it very important that we not experiment too much in something ongoing. Kelly Armstrong wrote a fantastic urban fantasy series called The Women of the Other World, and I love them. They alternate between narrators. Every couple of books, she switches narrators, and you can learn a lot about somebody by which of her narrators is their favorite. And, you know, you're moving through this series, and about 2/3 of the way through, we suddenly have one book that is third person and no one gets laid. And these are paranormal romance urban fantasies. The sex is great. I don't write sex. I do read sex. She writes great sex. And most books are first person with at least one really hot paranormal people using their weird powers to have incredibly kinky, humanly impossible sex. And that's what I want. So I get this book and I'm like, I'm going to get the. Why is everyone wearing clothes? It wasn't what I came for. And so even though I'm sure Kelly had a great time writing it, and I might have enjoyed it if I had picked it up as a standalone, as a part of this ongoing series, it was not a good book. And that's kind of how I feel about experimentation. Oh no, criticize away. Isn't that N.K. Jemisin? Okay, yeah, no. Yeah, there are exceptions to everything. I have written books in the present tense. I have read and enjoyed books in the present tense. I have seen stuff done in the second person that doesn't make me want to murder the author. I have enjoyed first person. I have seen third person omniscient that didn't feel like cheating. It's all down to the author and how they're handling it. But on experimentation, I do feel like it has a time and a place. Yeah.
So are you saying then that there's sort of a, not exactly a contract, but some sort of a relationship between the author and their readers to give them what they want and at the same time expanding what you want to do?
So, you know, to go back again to the crassness that is talking about money, I want your money. That is just like a full and honest and accurate statement. I want your money. I want you to want to give me your money. And if I want that, I need to keep doing things that you want to see. Now, I'm going to change as an author, just like you're going to change as a reader. The length of our relationship is hopefully decades. And the things that I am writing today are not the things that I was writing when I started. They couldn't be. I wasn't good enough when I started. Middle Game, which we mentioned a little while ago, I still think is my single best work. It took me 10 years of actively choosing projects to work on aspects of the craft that I needed to have for Middle Game to get to where I was good enough to feel like I could write that book and actually have it make a damn bit of sense. Because it's not a beginner's level difficulty book. It's not a book that you just start with. And I have to keep producing things you want to read for you to keep giving me money. You might hit a point where you don't want to give me money anymore. And it might be because the books make you sad. It might be because my politics make you sad. We don't know. We don't know if in 10 years we're going to find out that COVID actually does turn you into a crab, which is the thing I did in a recent Patreon story. We had a story that, we had a disease that basically triggered carcinization in people. So you'd catch it and you'd have some long-term effects and you'd be fine. And then 10 years later, you would turn into a giant crab person. This was not appealing. It was not fun. But maybe in 10 years, we find out that long COVID actually is the beginning of carcinization and a quarter of the human population turns into crabs. And I have come out as virulently anti-crab. And you think that that's a eugenicist standpoint because they are still people inside their horrifying chitinous exteriors. And you are unwilling to buy my books because of my anti-crab person stance. That's okay. We can drift apart, but I still want your money. And that means that my side of the contract is to try and write books that you will enjoy. Also, I really appreciate how much of the audience is now making crab hands at each other. Like, it is time for crab, people. Time for crab. Orson Scott Card, I enjoyed him when I was a kid. I did. I liked his books. And then he started talking about how people like me are disgusting and have no right to get married and should never be allowed to be a part of normal society. I don't give him my money anymore. I will buy books from Half Price Books if I find them there because he doesn't get any of that money. But I will not recommend him to people, even though I think his books are good. I won't recommend him because if you have to go out and buy a new copy, you've just given Orson Scott Card money. And if you did that because I told you Orson Scott Card was a good author, I have given him money tangentially. Part of the contract between author and reader, I feel really strongly applies to series writers. I am a series writer. I think we all are aware of that. I just finished the 16th October Day book. Don't clap. People periodically ask me, how close are you to the ending? And I say, I think I'll live that long. Yeah. Uh-huh. There's a date at the start of every book. It has led to the fact that we are slipping further and further into the past because there's not a full year between books, but don't worry, I have a solution for that. You won't like it. We're not going back to the pond. We're fine. Yeah. Good for him. Yeah, timelines in an ongoing series are difficult. Ms. Pond.
I had a question about your music, actually.
Okay, well, I am the music guest, so that's probably timely.
I have a couple of your albums. They're very hard to get a hold of.
Yes.
There are reasons for that. My question is actually about the ways that your songs tie into your books, tie back into your songs. And I just wonder about the order of operations workflow of that, because, a couple of albums will have a couple of Rose Marshall songs. There'll be a couple of Toby or encrypted adjacent songs. And I guess I wonder what usually comes first.
There aren't actually any Toby songs that have been recorded because it's very hard to write songs without spoilers. Well, I write a lot of songs about drowning people, so they probably sound like Blue Shock songs, but they're not actually technically Toby songs. So usually the order of operations is I have the story, I'm working on the story. It is much faster, as it turns out, to write a song than it is to write a novel. So they are kind of contemporaneous. That being said, there have been some cases of, I will now just turn this song into a written thing. What a Woman's For became the short story. What a Woman's For became the short story. Laughter at the Academy, a study in the development of schizotypical creative genius personality disorder. because that's easy to say. The song Silent Hill got strongly repurposed for Don't Go Out Alone in the Parasite series. That is the exact same scansion and some of the same lyrical beats. The original appearance of Rose Marshall, the first time we met Rose Marshall, was in the song Pretty Little Dead Girl. So you can argue that in that case, the song came first, though it's very perplexing and the order of operations is very skewed. Everything's kind of contemporaneous most of the time. Yeah. They are not. Writing Again is actually a cover song. It was written by a New York. Are they in New York? A New York area, upstate New York area band called We're About Nine. So I believe that's on their album Stardust something else. I really love We're About Nine. They're a fantastic band. But yeah, they're not connected. Dear Thomas is from the perspective of Alice Healy after when she was going off to college. And we have just finally hit that point in the timeline. And oh my God, everyone realizes Jonathan is the worst. And I've been dealing with that for decades. The entire encrypted series is a long con to get you invested in the relationship between Alice Healy and Thomas Price. It took me 10 books. But we got you there. 10 books and about 8 books worth of short stories. At one point, my publisher did ask, do you think you have enough short stories for a collection? I gave them 3. They said, we don't have room in the pub schedule. So right now there are no short story collections planned. That was not meant to get your hopes up. But yeah, it took a while. It took a while. Dear Thomas is Alice talking about Thomas, and the whole thing. There are a bunch of songs that haven't been recorded yet, even from that cycle. We're working on an album. It's called Saint of Thorns. I don't know if it's ever going to be finished. We'll find out together. It's an adventure. It's a terrible adventure. But the last part I was saying about the compact between author and reader, I feel that especially for a series author, you are making a promise. If I say book 1 on the cover, I am making a promise that I will do my best to get you the rest of that series. I will devote time to it. I will try to do it in a timely fashion, and I will do my best. It's not always within the author's power. You wind up in situations like Catherine Valenti wrote the Chronicles of Prester John. The 3rd book has been delayed like 15 years due to publisher existence failure. The publisher collapsed out from underneath her, and they still owned the rights to books 1 and 2. So for the longest time, she couldn't reprint. She had no way to get those stories out there. Well, now she has the rights back, and she has re-released ebooks of books 1 and 2. She's planning to do a Kickstarter next year for book 3. You will also occasionally get cases where the publisher doesn't want to continue the series. I wrote a book as Mira Grant called Into the Drowning Deep. I desperately want to write the sequel, which is called Out of the Swallowing Sea, but Orbit has not yet commissioned it, and no one else is going to publish book 2 without having the rights to book 1. So if Orbit doesn't buy it, it's eventually going to be, I am going to really surprise my Patreon and just be like, here's a book, leave me alone. Something like that. But if it is up to me, I will always get you the next book. I will do my damnedest. And I am personally offended by the existence of authors who don't do that. Because it's always the very high profile white guys that make too much money too quickly and then suddenly realize they have options that are not sitting and staring at their keyboard for 20 hours a day. Options are great. Money is great. You know what's better? Not making your readers so mad that they fuck the rest of us. So I do feel that's part of the contract, is that I have made a commitment to you. That doesn't make me your bitch, as Neil Gaiman once, kindly said, but it does mean that I have made a promise and I should do my absolute damnedest to keep it. Yeah. No. Tybalt was straight up not intended to be the long-term love interest in that series. Surprise! I have been told that. Yeah, well, clearly I got stuck with it. No, my original plan was Connor. The thing people do not necessarily realize with the Toby books because of timing and all of that is I wrote the first one when I was 19 and then spent 10 years rewriting and workshopping it. So it is a more adult book than that, but still that's the first book I ever wrote. I wrote it as a teenager. So some of the initial relationship stuff is my idea at 19 of how all this worked. It was not necessarily completely realistic. Hey, surprise, surprise. I know, right? But yeah, no, it was not meant to be Tybalt. Tybalt was just a jerk who would not leave. I kept trying to make him leave. He would not leave because he knew better than I did. One of the things that my brain does, and I know a lot of other people whose brains do this, but not everyone does, is my brain thinks that I will get in the way if it allows me to be involved. Remember that the part of your brain that is you is very small. The rest is all subconscious and basic, protocol workings, and it's doing its thing. You are just making things complicated. You are the part of the swamp that thinks it's in charge. All of the frogs are like, fuck you, lady. The fuck? So my brain will intentionally distract me with something shiny while it sets shit up. It'll be like, hey, Shannon, no, you can't kill Tybalt. I know you'd like to, but look over there. Look, pearlized mail order baby My Little Ponies from year 4. Ooh. And while I'm over there playing with my ponies, my brain is just setting things up quietly. Do. And then I will hit the point in the story where it's okay to tell me because I can't fuck it up anymore. We've got too much work here. And then suddenly my brain's like, hey, love interest. Hey, you just killed your narrator. Hey, what? And I'm like, what? Wait, okay, I'm gonna reread what I was foreshadowing this for 100 pages. What? The Incident, which we do not identify the book that it's in for the people that haven't read it yet, but The Incident, I had no idea was coming. I legitimately did not think that person was going to die. I thought we were getting them out of the book alive. And then it became clear that the story did not work if I got them out of the book alive. They were going to die a horrible death. And I had been foreshadowing it since page 6. It would be so much work not to do that. Oh my God, what the fuck? Barbecue alpaca. Okay, so I just, that works for me. And I just sort of let the brain do it and it does what it wants to do. So we are coming up on the end. Do we have any final questions? Yes. Do I have a favorite Disney park? Yes. I mean, all of them, but really my favorite right now has got to be Hollywood Studios, because Hollywood Studios has, no, not Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom. Disney's Animal Kingdom has Pandora, which Flight of Passage, like, screw the Avatar movies. I don't care. Flight of Passage, the ride, is the future of amusement park rides. I rode that ride and came off it the first time in tears. All I could say for like 5 minutes was Pokemon are real. Because it is such an immersive 3D experience. That's where Dinosaur is. It's fast, it's a blast, it's in the past, where you get to be menaced by dinosaurs and there's never a line. So I have found out exactly how many times I can ride that ride before I can feel my kidneys every time I breathe, because it's very jerky. And I love Dinosaur and I love my beloved Carnotaurus. Every time we get the ride photo from that ride, the Carnotaurus jumps out, I'm a big dinosaur, and the ride goes snap, snap, and it gets a picture of everyone going, ah! And I'm always there going, oh. My boy, he is here for me. I once came around a corner at Disney's Animal Kingdom and found Darkwing fucking Duck just standing there. Just like Darkwing. Okay, I'm gonna hug Darkwing Duck now. Yay. Because they do Donald's Dinosaur Duck Festival there every year. So I just love Animal Kingdom. Plus, like all the other parks in Florida, it is full of frogs. So many frogs. The food at Animal Kingdom is pants. I don't like it. Though I do like the buffet, though I'm not sure there are buffets in this world anymore. I'm aware, I've been watching the time, but thank you for checking in. So Animal Kingdom is best. Let's go to Disney World. Let's be done with this fucking pandemic so I can go to Disney World. Okay, do we have any last questions before they throw us out of this room? Yes. What is my pony collection like? Well, it has its own room. It is large. It is large, it is robust, it has reached the point where if I am ever a Worldcon guest of honor, which my friend Kate loves playing chicken with Worldcon committees by pointing out that I fit literally every checkbox they want for a Worldcon guest of honor and then watching them go, not like that. But if I'm ever a Worldcon guest of honor, my special display could just be, we're bringing the pony room. It'll take up half the fucking dealer's room. I have all but one play sets that have been released. The only play set I am missing is the Megan's Place from year 11. I have approximately 6,000 Generation 1 My Little Ponies. We're down to 5 pages on the wish list, not 5 ponies, 5 pages. And some of them there are less than 5 of left in the world. And you can't see pictures because right now the pony room looks like a small nuclear bomb has gone off in it. Sadly, there will be pictures soon. I am not a Christmas person. I celebrate Hogs Watch every year. But when I was a kid, we did Christmas because my grandma was around and she was Easter Sunday Episcopalian. And the Christmas I was 9, she got me a Paradise Estate. And that was the best Christmas present I ever received. She had stuck it under the tree in a great big box and it had a name tag on it that said Mom. And she told me it was Mom's new microwave and I had to help her keep the secret for weeks ahead of time. Come Christmas morning, she gets up, walks over to the big box and slaps on a new name tag. I had the paper off that thing in less than 4 seconds. The Paradise Estate is the single largest playset ever made for one toy line. Boy, girl, doesn't matter. Single largest playset. I managed to source a complete one this last July. It is in my living room. It is still in the box. I am opening it Christmas morning. So that is my Christmas present to myself. I'm still Shannon McGuire, but we no longer have this room. Thank you for coming to my AMA. We're doing other things this weekend. I have a concert tonight. There are many concerts between now and then, but that one is mine. Hello. No, I've got masks. All is well. It's just keeping it from pulling off my ears. I have tiny, tiny ears.
You might want your phone too.
Your wizard. Got relationships. Testing, testing. Oh, Carlos. Carlos, you are you're handing out the Make Your World, right?
Yeah, but we'll need one for you too. Actually, this stage is on, it's not on.
Do you want to turn it on to this way?
I did.
Oh. Hello, hello. Let's turn on the microphone. This one's on, Carlos. And what about this one? We need more than one microphone turned on. We just need 2 microphones turned on. Is that all right? Hello. Oh, thank you so much. So Carlos, this one's working now.
Hello, hello. Yes. All right, we're going to let people come on in. Welcome, everybody. We are going to get started with a little infernal negotiation. So really excited to be here. I was a virtual guest of honor at Escapetopia in just like a little tiny thing. And it was wonderful and had a great time. But it was not this, it was not wandering around among the people, getting all of your energy and all of this love. So thank you so much for having both Claire and me here.
Thank you so much for coming.
And one of the things that we are both really excited about, truly, is the fact that in the 21st century, there's just so much new ways in which to express yourselves through writing and through storytelling. We were talking about it in the car that with podcasts come a whole new era of oral storytelling that has been pushed aside, for 100 and something years, but the podcast has helped us recover that. And I think we are living in a game revolution, specifically in a board game revolution, and even more so a role-playing game revolution. So like if you are at all interested in role-playing games, this is a great time to get into it. I have lots of suggestions for you. For this crowd, Monster Hearts, Fiasco, anything that's powered by the apocalypse, like these are great games that you can get your hands on. There's a great one that came out called Worldwide Wrestling that is truly really well done. So it's making like a weird crackling sound. I'm wondering if I can.
That's the only one that was working, but here, if you got this one, then I'll try to talk on this one.
Maybe if I stand really still.
Maybe have it on here, see what happens. Sorry, technical difficulty.
It's a little better, actually. She's very smart, people. So, about 3 years ago, I made it a mission to make a role-playing game that Claire would love.
Oh, it's a tough act. I'm an actor and a writer, so to want to play a role-playing game where you have to act and create, that's not for money and only for fun. I mean, and I really play well by myself and not so much with others. But I love the man.
Well, but so we were on a retreat with Scott Andrews, who edits Beneath Ceaseless Skies. And so we were on a retreat, and as part of the fun of the retreat, we were going to play Dungeons and Dragons. He's a he's a consummate DM, extremely hardworking DM. Those of you who Dungeon Master know how much work you could put into a campaign, and he does all of that work. So he is a very, very fine Dungeon Master, and he wanted to do a one-shot. Claire, how did you like the one-shot?
Well, okay. It made me very anxious. A couple things. All these people had played D&D before. They know all the things already. So there's a lot of information that you have to remember, that you have, and then like on top of all the stats and all the things that you're carrying with you in your backpack and the type of person you are and how you roll, like then you also have to improv on top of that. And the people who are good at it, I'm not bad at improv, I know that, but I was not good at this kind of improv under these circumstances. Also, not crazy about a combat situation where you're inevitably rolled into a fight every time. I just find combat one of the least interesting ways of having a crisis. And third, it just kept going and I had no idea when it would stop or if it would ever stop. I work really well, like on a board game, there's often a countdown mechanic. You can see the deck go down. You can see a timer. You can on Mysterium, there's a clock that you like tick throughout the different stages, which a game can last 5 hours. Sure. I just have to know that in 5 hours it will be done. And so D&D was a little difficult for me.
Yeah. I mean, those of you who are D&Ders, right? You also know that you don't know when that game is going to end. Like the sun can be rising and your glass of Mountain Dew could be sparkling in the morning sun and you're suddenly, where did the time go, right?
And I think people find that a feature. You know?
Yeah. But not Claire
Not
so
me.
much.
Sorry.
So the goal was to make a game that was a role-playing game that Claire would love. So accentuating the things that she does extremely well, but also removing perhaps some of the things that were cumbersome, like a 5-page character sheet where you have to remember, lots of different skills and feats and abilities that you might have, and narrowing it down to the essential quality of like what makes a role-playing game fun. The randomness still would be there because randomness adds energy to role-playing and storytelling. But what else? So Claire also loves Mysterium. How many of you know the game Mysterium? You know this game? Those of you in the back who are not raising your hands, go get Mysterium.
It's so beautiful.
It's Clue by way of Dixit. So basically you're trying to figure out who the murderer is, but it's the ghost trying to tell you, except they can't talk. All they have are these surreal cards that they hand you with these weird images on them. And through empathy, the mechanic is empathy. You try to divine what it is that they're trying to connect to with these images in order to figure out who done it, where they done it, what they used to do it at the end. And it's a cooperative game as well. So all of those sorts of inspirations is what we did for our game, Negocios Infernales. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take you through a little bit of the game to give you the setup. I guess like the kind of like Hollywood pitch thing that you probably are familiar with. The Hollywood pitch that we use is sort of like Queen Isabella Spain meets alien invasion. And so this is the premise for the setting. And what we'll do now is we'll read you the invocation. So the way that this plays in the game, stolen unapologetically from a really great little role-playing game called For the Queen, another one that I want to really recommend to people. Basically, everyone around the table gets a series of cards. 4 players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you take turns reading cards aloud in order to set the scene. I'm going to start us now with the invocation. In the country of Espada, you serve the queen, Reina Resoluta. You are her secret wizards.
There were no wizards a year ago in Espada. Magic arrived with the aliens.
Of course, you didn't understand they were aliens. You still don't.
Your blunderbusses are unreliable, your telescopes short-ranged, your engines clockwork, and your chemistry alchemy.
You cannot imagine a universe in which you are not the center.
Usually the aliens do not make contact with civilizations as primitive as yours.
But they knew you were headed for ruin.
Reina Resoluta was about to sign religious persecution into law.
Rather than let your world be destroyed by bigotry and fanaticism, the aliens made contact early with you to save you from yourselves.
Are you devils? Asked a stunned Reina Resoluta when the aliens, one unremarkable afternoon, teleported into her throne room.
Think of us rather as your benefactors, said the aliens.
La Reina gave them a knowing wink. Will you, oh benefactors, bestow uncanny powers on all Espadans who sign away their immortal souls to you?
The alien shrugs. Close enough.
And so a deal was struck.
You are an Espadan who bargained with a devil for strange magical powers.
Thus you became one of Reina Resoluta's secret wizards, and this is your story.
So that sets the scene for Negocios Infernales. You move right into character creation after that. So this is a GM-less game. There is no one in charge. You might want a master of ceremony, someone who's actually read the rules through once or something, but you have a GM-less game, and what you do is you make your characters all together. And so the way that you do that is through, let me just grab it right here.
He's grabbing a character sheet, just so you know, and so we don't have the silent radio silence. And he will also probably pass out a how to interpret a card, which is the main mechanic. So every player would get a character sheet with 4 slots on it. The first is your motivation. So think of it as your characters, like, you know, if you were in a play, you and your director would be like, what's my character's motivation? What gets them up in the morning? What's their last thought before they go to sleep? What drives them to their secret drive to be the person that they are? So the first is motivation. The second you would fill out is your role in Reina Resoluta's court. So basically, you are a secret wizard. Nobody really knows you're a wizard except you and the queen and the other secret wizards, because you're still this close to having been subject of an inquisition, and you don't want to end up being burnt at the pyre in some auto da fe. So you have an alter ego, a sort of Clark Kent to your Superman personality. And it can be anything from throws the queen's chamber pot out the window in the morning official pooper scooper maid, right up to the queen's concubine or the queen's trusted advisor or her astronomer. We'll have lots of examples in the rule book, but you can also just, when you draw a card, you would suddenly be like, this has a fruit on it. I am the queen's orchard keeper, you know. That would be part of the role in court. And then the third slot is for your magic. This is what you bargained with the aliens for. So it would be deeply tied in with your motivation, your secret drive. What would you bargain? What would you think you'd bargain your soul for to receive back? And it's like an X-Men level of power, not like a Superman like a god level of power, but a demigod level of power. The last is your doom. Now, you don't write this one down immediately. You just draw a card for it. The doom basically is what you think will happen, what you think you deserve to have happen to you because you bargained your soul away. Now, the aliens didn't want to give you a doom. The aliens were like, we just want you to join the cosmic consciousness, man. But you're an Espadan in a certain century who feels very guilty about this bargain you struck, and you think you have to have a doom. So you draw for it, but you don't use it yet. But you know that one day this doom will befall you, and the aliens are like, okay, whatever. If that makes you sleep at night, you can have a doom.
Yeah, those of you who are former Catholics can really relate to that sort of like built-in guilt that we're building on here. But so what I've handed out now, as well as the how to interpret a card, and this is one of the guides that we have. And so, you know, this is a game where you are doing a tarot-like reading of your own character for the character creation, but it's not a tarot set that you're using here. It's these wacky, spooky set of cards that we have. So each card has 3 things, has a little saying or adage on it. It has some kind of artwork, and it has its suit.
And the artwork is by Rebecca Houston.
Yes.
The wonderful Rebecca Houston, roommate to our friend J9 here.
So Beck fell off a horse and broke her left arm. So yeah, not recently.
2 years ago when we were developing
2
this.
years ago, yes. So she fell off a horse, broke her left arm. She's a tattoo artist. And one thing I didn't know, but makes sense when you think about it, is that you can't really be a tattoo artist with just one arm. Something's got to hold things steady. Yes. Oh, okay, I'll come around to get it in a moment. But so Beck needed work at a time when she couldn't do her tattooing, and we're like, hey, wondering if you could make us some cards. And so that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship where we really lucked out and got a
Thank
great
you, Rich.
artist to be able to make the art for us. So what you would do is you would interpret the card that you have and you would say, okay, am I going to use the suit this time? Or am I going to use the artwork? Or am I going to use the saying or any combination thereof? Any small piece of the card or the whole gestalt? You can interpret it, whatever the mood strikes you, that's the right answer. And so, it's a game where we encourage courage and, bravura and really embracing your choices, sort of the way that you would in any kind of improv game.
And we have a pre-invocation mini deck where everybody is affirming their trust in themselves and each other. We really want to say everything you write is right. We want to yes and. So because people feel very timid when they're doing something new. And we want to just say, you're doing it right. Whatever you think, that's the actual thing, the way to do it.
Right. So we're going to have Claire demonstrate how to do this. I've got the full deck here, and I'm going to ask for a volunteer named John O'Neill to draw a card.
I see. So this is, see, it's blue. The border is blue. There's 7 different colors for the borders. There's 7 suits. The blue suit is aire, or the breath of life. The breath of life. And the saying on the suit says, the soul loves all, the mind but some. And it's a woman sewing the lips of a man shut. This makes me happy. One of the first stories I ever had published professionally involved somebody sewing somebody else's mouth shut. This is great. So this is my motivation.
This is your motivation. So this is, if you look at your character sheet, this is what you will use to determine, sort of like the way an actor asks a director, what's my motivation? The answer is this card, however you choose to interpret it. So Claire, it's a thing that it's the motivation that's behind all the other motivations of this character. What you think about at night before you go to bed, the thing that keeps you awake at night when you can't sleep, this sort of like motivation that is the engine of everything else that you do. So we'll use this in the role playing to help design some of the other choices that you'll make in terms of role in court. Time comes for your doom as well.
We just wanted to also say, we'll have a mini deck under the Make Your Characters that's a little guide to the suits. Need a little extra structure. There is that for you too. Aire, breath of life, is the suit is about intellect, religion, philosophy, and art. Dreams, plans, life's vicissitudes. Fate, ever capricious, blows us to and fro. Rarefied beauty, unspeakable nightmares, and at the center of all, your soul. Ooh. So my character's motivation, the soul loves all, the mind but some. My character would really like nothing better than to be an anchorite, which is a great word that I love. And it is an obscure religious sect where you would like to be walled into a room with nothing but one little window where people can shove food at you, or perhaps books and supplies, but you're alone in a room because you don't like people, except that you love people as an idea. My character is very extremely introverted and just wants to pray for a spada all day and all night. But if she ever has to talk to people, she's extremely awkward, bitterly sarcastic, and extremely cynical. But when she's alone, she's a cupcake and a saint, practically a saint in her own mind.
I love that. And just to give you a sense, as I'm looking at this card right now, I've interpreted this card before, but as I'm looking at it now, I would go a different route. I would say this is a person who loves to dominate a conversation, loves to dominate every situation that they're in, are actively thinking of conversations as competitions and looking to control every situation that they happen to be in. Different, a different way to go with it. You could just focus on the airy part of it. You could use what Claire had read earlier and focus more on that suit-like quality if you wanted to. So what I'd like to challenge you all to do right now, in your heads, or if you have a pen, even on that character sheet, I'm going to walk around with this card and I'm going to let you look at it for a few seconds. I'm going to challenge you to think about what kind of motivation would your character have. Again, not required to do anything you don't want to, but feel free to engage.
When you're done with it, can you put it up here and we'll show the different colors?
Absolutely.
Actually, I can just look for it. One of the things you'll want to remember during the game when you're making your character sheet, you have 4 slots. You're going to draw 4 cards. The one rule is that none of the suits can match. You want 4 different colors on your character sheet, because later when you're playing and making magic checks to see if you have succeeded in your enchantment or if you have succeeded in talking somebody into something, you draw a card from the deck. And if it doesn't match your character sheet, you have not succeeded. But if you draw one that does match, you have succeeded. So it's important to get 4 different colors on your character sheet. Oh yeah, so some people write bullet points, some people write one word. I tend to kind of write mini novels in each of my sections and then have to flip the page over and keep writing. And sometimes it's an iambic pentameter. I don't know. We all do it differently.
And so we move on to trait number 2, your role in court. Claire explained this, but just to remind you.
This is from my deck.
Oh, that's from your deck. Okay. The role in court is basically the alter ego that you have in order to keep you close to the queen and the castle, so that in a moment's notice, you can spring into action to save Espada with your uncanny powers. So everyone has a day job, basically, in the court. We encourage you to use the card to basically figure out where was your station before you became a wizard, and then did that keep going, or did you adopt something else? You know, you could be the char woman, the lowliest of the low. You could be the secretary of war. There's no restriction in terms of what role you could play, because your real role is to be a secret wizard. So I'm going to ask someone else to draw a second card, and I think it's going to be Lowell.
Lowell. Draw for me, Lowell.
All right. Awesome.
Oh, I love that one. So, I love them all. I pretty much say that every time, but it's always true.
So the card, it's a Rayo card. This is the spark of life. It is different from Aire, so it's allowed. Basically they have to be all different suits. And you can see that there's, little knives and axes behind people's backs here. The saying says, every game begins unwon. Every game begins unwon. And so Claire, she's finding her own copy of it now that she'll be looking at. But, we can, again.
I'll read about the Rayo suit if you like.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Rayo. So you'll notice that these all have, we were thinking about Terry Pratchett's Wintersmith, when the Wintersmith is wondering what maketh a man, what maketh a human being. And the Wintersmith is like, oh, iron enough to fill a thimble, dirt enough to da-da-da. Like, so it kind of goes through the elements, and it thinks that by combining all these elements, it can make itself human. But humans know humans aren't really made of nails and spit and, clay. But so we were thinking, what maketh a human? Lightning, rayo, so the spark of life. Carne, meat, the meat of life.
Sangre,
the blood of life. Lagrimas, the brine or the tears of life. Aire, the breath of life.
Hueso, the bones of life.
Hueso, the bones of life. The 7th suit is outside. It's outside of what maketh a human. It's espacio, everything that is space outside of the human comprehension.
The surround.
Everything that surrounds, So Rayo, which is this card that you've just pulled for me, raw power, elemental forces, energy, electricity, fire, the engine of both miracles and cataclysms, the hidden reserves raging in every living thing. And sometimes those reserves are unleashed.
So Claire's card is every game begins unwon. But again, maybe won't use the words. Maybe she'll focus on the images or the suit. You can use
I just love the image so much. And I know the image pretty well. So what I'm going to say is that though my character secretly wishes to be an anchorite and to be walled into a wall and never speak to anybody again, what they have done as a living is they're a bravo. They're the queen's sword. They're the hired duelist. They basically run people through for a living. Maybe that's why they want to be like walled into a wall. They don't want to do that anymore, but it's a living. You got to eat. And so, so my character is the queen's duelist.
If I'm looking at this card, I might focus on this ship in the corner and say, you know what? I'm just going to be a simple, lowly sailor, unassuming, just put me on a ship, tell me what to do, and I will follow orders. That will be my beginning as well. So again, just you can use any part of it. I'm going to walk around with this and urge you to think about what role in court this inspires for you. Again, remember, anything that has to do with life in a castle or in a queendom.
Your neighbors, you could consider them your fellow players, your fellow wizards. In this game, no information is hidden from any of the players. The players have what Carlos calls perfect information. The wizards may not know everything about the other wizards. They know that they're wizards, but that's about all they know. But the players know everything. It's a collaborative game. You're not in competition with anybody. You all have to do this quest that you're going to eventually go on together as a group. So that's one of the most interesting things. And as people are creating their wizards, one person might get stuck. It's totally fine for somebody to say, I've got this card. You have any ideas for me? And it's totally fine for that person to be like, oh, I have like 10 off the top of my head. And that wizard who's writing may not use any of those 10 ideas, but having those 10 more options can sometimes spark the 11th option.
Now we get to the good part. So the next thing on your sheet is your magic. So you have a motivation, you're getting some sense of who this person is. You know what their role in court is, either something that they've been doing all their life, something that they've recently adopted, anywhere in between. From those two facts, you draw a card and you determine what fell magic that they decide was worth more than their immortal soul. So this is a game of dramatic irony. We know that there is much more going on than the Espadans realize, but in the character's mind, they are either so desperate or so power hungry or so something that they are willing to make this bargain for superhuman power. So this is the key concept of the game. Basically, this is the bargain.
And the aliens are like, oh, you poor little chickens.
So, Tina Jens, would you like to draw a card for Claire's magic?
Give me my magic, Jens. I know. I can't have that one. It was probably great too. I probably had the best magic, but no, I'll have to have a different one. What color? Hueso. So the bones. You can see, you'll see when he brings it around, but the border is all these interlocking, creepy bones, which of course I love.
And this card reads, inaction is the death before death. Inaction is the death before death. So it is a Hueso card, and it has a startling, terrible image on it. You know, like it's definitely a ghoulish, you know, morbid, mordant kind of game.
So, okay, hueso, bones of life. If I were to look for extra inspiration from the mini deck, it would be, we all must perish. Time is relentless, aging and weakening, inevitable. What shall be your legacy? Focus on the big picture. Stay strong until you can't. And then when it's time, die well. Maybe I'll get into that. Maybe I won't. What I have is a woman with her back turned on something terrible that's happening, and in her eye is a skull. And there's a gentleman throttling someone. Inaction is the death before death. That by turning your back on something and not doing anything about it, you are actually like losing a piece of yourself. Maybe I would interpret it that way. Other people would do it differently. I like this skull in her eye, though. It reminds me of Raistlin from Dragonlance Chronicles and his little hourglass. Yes, big love for Raistlin. So let's see, bone in the eye, bone in the eye. Okay, I like the idea that my wizard, for her power, she likes to be surrounded by walls. We've established that. She kind of kills people for a living. We established that. I think she would love when she needs to be able to encase herself or another person in an armor or a tower or surrounding them in a wall of bone, just like build them a parapet or a fortification. And so when her power works well, that's what happens. When it doesn't work, either it happens like to the nth degree, or maybe it starts growing inward and she starts getting like these bony protuberances poking at her on the inside. Who knows what happens when it doesn't go wrong? It could go wrong in many different ways throughout the course of the game, and probably will.
So I look at this card, and again, I'll bring it around for you, but there's someone choking someone else in the background. And I immediately thought, I've always wanted a force choke. I'm angry that I can't. Maybe this will be the game that I do it. So the way that I would write it on my card or on my sheet would be maybe something like, I can control other living things breathing. Ooh. And that will be a scary, frightening power to use.
Or he'd just write force choke.
Right.
Revenge, force choke.
Yeah, that might be in parentheses somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I really want a force choke. Okay, I'm going to take this around for you. Decide what your magic is.
Yeah, the magic is the fun one. I mean, they're all fun, but the magic's really fun. And remember, it's not a superhuman. It's superhuman. It's not Superman-like or big, omnipotent, god-like. You can't turn the whole world into bone, but you can't. The X-Men is sort of like a local power. You can influence something in the moment of action, I would say, because otherwise you could just super stop the game if you could just, the whole world's bone now. In the rule book, again, we have lots of suggestions, but one of the things that we say is that it doesn't even have to be a power that comes from the wizard. It can be an object that the aliens gave you. You don't know what it is. It could look like a beep boop bop beep boop boop thing, or it could be a hat, or it could be anything. And the aliens would be like, here you go. This does what you want it to. But the aliens' understanding of humans is, let's say, imprecise at best.
Even though they seem to have an opinion, we've never had people interpret them the same way. So it is really interesting in that way. So the last card you get, but you don't write anything about it yet. This is your doom. So
doom.
Again, doom.
It's the
so
claw.
You're basically a bad Catholic. And so you've made this terrible deal. And you think, in fact, you're sure that you're going to be punished with this with a fate worse than death. So at some point, maybe not in the game, by the way, it doesn't have to come true. It's not foretold in the game itself, but it's waiting for you. This doom that is worse than death. And so
chances are it will happen during the game.
Yes, go ahead.
Pretty good chance.
What they are knowledgeable about is that they have this image that they've dreamt about, this horrific scene in their mind of something that will happen, but there are no words attached to it. There's no prophecy per se. Instead, it is more like this vision that they've had of something impending that will happen to them.
Which will be represented by the card until the moment of decision.
So Claire right now has 3 cards. I'm just going to this won't be your actual doom. We'll do something else. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, that this fourth card is here. So this would basically be her complete character. When she does magic checks, the only thing that she's doing is she's checking, do I have a card that matches one of the cards here? So this is not a match, it's a different suit. So this
Carne.
means terrible, terrible things are going to happen to her character and in the story.
I got no meat.
Yeah, 4 and 7 to start, but depending on which cards are drawn, the odds vary as well. So you do enough of those mistakes, you miss your magic enough times, you actually lose the game. So this is a role-playing game that you can win or lose. Part of the reason is because Claire wanted a countdown.
I want a countdown. Our countdown is a big sword. It's because our country is a spada, which means sword or
Right.
blade.
And so we have a representative figure of the queen, and she gets marched down the sword. And once the queen is buried to the hilt, you're dead.
Game's over.
But at that moment, at that precipitous moment when the queen would tip over and the game would be lost, any character so willing can activate their doom. And that will forestall death for the game, but your character suffers immediately and greatly. And
And
so,
the only rule is they can't die because they have to keep playing with this terrible thing ongoingly happening to them.
so what you do is you interpret the card that you draw in the moment and you look at the doom that you have there and you decide, oh, I know exactly how to make my character suffer. Yes, this is a game where we wanted to make losing as much fun as winning, because it isn't meant to be anything more than a one shot, so this isn't a character that you're meant to, grow attached to or anything. Like whatever happens to them, enjoy the ride. So without further ado then, Maria, you want to draw Claire's doom?
Here, put this other doom back. I don't want your doom, Carlos. I want Maria's doom.
Oh my gosh.
Is it green? I have green, don't I?
Nope.
Oh.
So this card says, drink a little poison every day. Advice no one should follow. Please do not follow this advice. But this is what the card says. Drink a little poison every day. We have a woman who has a skeletal hand holding a little vial, looking askance at it. We'll go around. But so Claire would not need to interpret this actively in this moment as part of
But I have a
character
great
creation.
idea.
Well, you can say what you might think would happen.
Okay, so she has a skeleton hand, right? And my magic is like the bony encasement of boniness, right? So like drink a little poison every day. So if her doom is activated every single day, another part of her ossifies and turns to bone. I like it, but she's still alive. So eventually, after enough days have passed, she'll be like a walking, talking skeleton. And maybe then she'll be completely re-enfleshed again and it'll start over. So what, 206 bones in the body? So she has 206 days as she's slowly ossifying and then whoop, cycle starts again.
Wow. That. Oh, say again?
Oh,
the suit is
lágrimas.
lágrimas,
So
or the
this is-
tears of life.
The tears of life, things break. The world is full of melancholy, but tears can be joyful. Pain can save us. Our insignificance is both woe and comfort. And one never knows what strange secrets the unfathomable seas may hold.
So at the right time, Claire might have to activate this doom. And what that does is a couple of things. So in the game, you're making magic checks, right? You're checking to see if you match things. If you activate your doom, this card becomes unavailable for future checks. So it's a little harder to make your magic work after that. So doom also has a mechanical consequence as well. But there is some good news in terms of missing a magic check. Every time you miss a magic check, you actually get to hold on the card that made you miss temporarily. You'll always hold on to your 4 original cards, but you might have up to 3 other misses temporarily until you get your next success. So basically, it keeps adding up success, or your failures keep adding up into possible successes until you get your next success, and then you remove all the temporary cards to the end. But once you activate your doom, things definitely get a little more desperate, and that precipitous queen on the the hilt of that sword is looking a little bit more in danger. Folks, you have a character. So what you
Okay.
have, you've got the character. So now you would get to play. So let me just.
We
take a-
have about, it's 12:38, just so you know where we're at.
So let's take you through the rest of the game. So what we've tried to do is make this game really function with a lot of setup for those who want it. And then we'll have advanced rules for people to remove the ligatures when they don't need them anymore. When they become, more adept or proficient at using the rule set that we have. So the next thing you would do is you would create relationships around the table with all your other wizards. And so we have different cards that we would use for that.
So we have another mini deck. You know how we had the mini deck that explained the suits? In this section, you have another mini deck that if you draw a card for a relationship, they have matching suit symbols at the top to help you give a little extra ligature. So if I drew to be a relationship with Carlos's wizard and it was red, I might look at the red card here, Sangre, and I have some choices: betrayal, oath sworn, playmates, friends. I could choose any one of those, or I could totally make something up that's none of those. But it's for people who kind of blank out sometimes under pressure, which all of us do sometimes,
Yeah, so we would create relationships, and relationships aren't reciprocal. So if Claire chose to have a relationship with me,
You're my playmate.
yeah,
I like to play with you.
we do have fun.
Yes.
But so not in our marriage, but like in the game, I don't have to reciprocate that. So,
Choose one. If you're my playmate, I
Well,
think he's my playmate.
so I did draw one, and the card I drew is a carnet card, and it's very Cook the Thief, his wife and her lover. It says, "Is your purpose to be someone else's meal?"
And carne for the helper card says indebted, intimidation, similar appetites, partners in crime.
Similar appetite seems really gross. I would probably go with that for this particular card right here.
And if I say playmates and he says similar appetites, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We'd figure that out between us. Possibly.
Exactly. We would talk through it as well. So we could set up relationships with each other, but we don't have to. Relationships can definitely be one-sided, and so that's something that we would represent in the game as well. The next thing that we would do is our world building. So what we want to do once we've established characters and relationships is learn a little bit about the custom espada that you'll be playing in. There are some facts that are true of every game. So in every game, there will be a queen whose name is Reina Resoluta. Plot bearing, important. There are about maybe 7 or 8 other small facts. We'll give you a map that has, basically some countries on it, and a monstrous whirlpool and a couple of other details.
But we
feed
also
the
want to
imagination.
encourage, you can add to the map. You can add places that aren't on the map.
Absolutely. Drawing in the map, strongly encouraged. But then what we have you do is we have you draw from the world building deck and a card to go with it.
It's 40 bespoke cards that sometimes have embedded facts in them, but also help you create your very own espada, different every time. But it's oddly fun how espada always feels like espada somehow.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to draw a card for you.
Okay, or make someone to draw a card.
Oh, yes. What am I doing?
I don't know. We like the audience. This is my favorite part, by the way, but I probably say that about every part, but this is really my favorite part. I love world building. I love world building. And I could just sit there and have a whole game, just answer all 40 of these with my cards. And then I'd be like, go away. I'm going to write a novel now.
So here's what the world building card says. Since the arrival of the benefactors, religious authorities have lost power in Espada. How are they responding?
Can we draw
Yeah,
then we'd consult Destino. So since the benefactors, the aliens arrived, religious authorities have lost power. How are they responding? Well, let's just see, shall we? The deck will tell us. The deck knows. The deck always knows. What'd I get?
You got a card that says pain is the opposite of thought.
We've got 2 figures being skewered here. So just so you know, at the very beginning, during the pregame, we would set lines and veils. We would set boundaries, what people are comfortable with. And if people are not comfortable, they would have the opportunity at any point to say, let's back out. We don't want this in the game. I tend to go a little dark, and I don't want to I don't really want to push anybody's boundaries when we haven't set those things. So let's see, I'll do a nicer one. The religious authorities, pain is the opposite of thought. They're really, I mean, their cookies are being totally frosted. that frosts my cookies. That's from Troop Beverly Hills from the 80s. Their cookies are totally frosted, that they've lost the respect of the queen and the court. But you know what? They believe that suffering makes them stronger. So they have been going out into the streets saying, oh, religion is all but lost. And, you know, I know you don't believe in God, the goddess, the deity anymore, but you know what? Even if you don't believe, we're even stronger. The more you don't believe, the stronger we become. So they've become more vocal and they've become more active and maybe even kindlier and gentler due to the benefactor's influence. The benefactors in their flying saucer are like, hell yeah, that's what we like to see.
Yeah.
Cool. Closer to the cosmic consciousness.
That's awesome. I've never heard that card interpreted that way, by the way. So like, I really love that direction that you went there. And it just astounds me that, you know, we can keep coming up with new ways to interpret the cards. After world building, after everyone has contributed to the world.
So but like if there's 4 wizards, you answer 4 questions.
Right. Or you do 20 because you're Claire and this is all you really want to do, you know.
Or you just want to do, because stay with the facts of Espada. You want to skip this part, you can do that too.
That's right. We'll have in the rule book basically ways of designing the game for fast role play or for huge world building, different ways that you can set up your own, depending on what group you're playing with. And then after you have your characters, your relationship, and your world set up, now it's time to pick an adventure. So we have 7 different adventures that are going to come with the game, but also a way to create them on the fly. Claire, would you read the 7 titles?
I will. I'm just calling it up on my phone right now. Hernan Dooney. Okay, so there's 7 genres. Depending on, you'll know with your group what everybody's kind of feeling that day. So a royal wedding is one of the genres. It's like the rom-com. The queen is getting married. Woohoo! Terrible things can happen, but terribly funny things can happen too. Oh yeah, we got a space marine. Hello.
Oh, everyone wave to the
That
space
is pretty
marine.
amazing.
Yeah.
Great. You're actually like oddly, I mean, he could be a benefactor.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, you know, yeah, feel free to walk around.
So a royal wedding is one of the genres, the rom-com. Oh, some people like combat, unlike me, and they want a game full of combat. So we have war with Pelea. Pelea is always the neighboring country that always has a problem with Espada. We've got Monsters Attack, which is our big kaiju one. You want to like battle huge monsters or huge robots, John O'Neill? You could do the Monsters Attack. John loves big robots. Who doesn't, right? I don't think anybody should say they don't love giant robots right now.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a mystery. We've got the mystery of the missing Reina. I love murder mysteries, or just actually, I like tax evasion mysteries too. I like mysteries. Nobody has to die. Just like solve a riddle. I really enjoy that. There's the Enchanted Isle, which is like the Alice in Wonderland, or maybe like the Tempest, where there's an island called Isla de las Mariposas, the island of the butterflies. And there's usually a journey there because weird stuff is going down on that island and you have to investigate for the queen. There is the Benefactor Gone Bad. For those of you who want a more sci-fi experience, one of the aliens has split off from the cosmic consciousness and some shit's going down. And then last but not least, we have a Gothic. So the ghosts know all your sins. The castle is haunted. Stuff is happening. And you would definitely want to figure it out or have your own agenda. The wizards are not always necessarily on the side of the queen, even though they're working for her. That's important to remember.
Yeah, you can betray the queen. Absolutely. So once you've picked your adventure, then you do something similar at the beginning with the invocation. You read the setting for the scene, and we have some cards there. Claire, do you want to just go through them?
Or just read the?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is very short. So you would get, you choose your module. You've chosen the Gothic, and you get this little envelope with your little invocation. You'd go around in a circle again. Everybody's telling the story like around a fire. When you went to bed last night, the coral castle was quiet, but you awake in the middle of the night to an uproar. People are screaming that the coral castle is haunted. Angry souls are calling out the moral missteps of the living, from the lowliest servants to Reina Resoluta herself. Attacks, possessions, curses from beyond the grave. These angry revenants are disrupting Espada's seat of power and therefore the entire nation. La Reina has demanded that you, her wizards, make contact with your diabolical benefactors. Using the omens they provide, you must expel the new evil that is haunting the Coral Castle, whether supernatural or mundane. That's
Yeah.
your like mystery.
Because it could be Scooby-Doo, it could be just like some, person's, mask that you have to remove at the end. But so that's your setting. And then what would happen is you would do a little presaging, engage in a little bit of augury.
We're going to do some oracles.
Yeah. So basically what you do is you don't actually answer questions about what the problem is. Instead, you have visions. So Claire, pick a card there.
So there's 6 questions La Reina wants answered. If you're only 4 players, that means you won't get all the questions having visions. You'll only have 4 visions. So let's say the queen is like, who is using the appearance of ghosts to question my moral authority? And we're like, I'll have a vision, Your Majesty. And then you choose a card and have a vision about who is using the appearance of ghosts to question the queen's moral authority. And I've got an Espacio card, which says, you are mostly holes. And somebody's eating cheese. So I would be like, I'm having a vision. My vision's going purple and misty, and I feel like I'm shot into a cosmic, strange space where I'm floating and I'm looking around, and just like my periphery, something's happening. There's a human figure, but they have it's cratered like the moon, and every time they turn, a shadow passes over their face until only a crescent is left, and then they turn and they have no face at all. And that's my vision
that's
to
the
answer the
vision.
queen's question.
What we do then
And
is,
Carlos is writing it down.
yeah, so I'm the scribe at this point, and I would be writing all this down. So she can just be free to envision what she wants without being burdened by trying to write it at the same time. So this is announced in the air. I write it down. And then our job is to turn that into an actionable order. So basically the queen hears this vision. She's like, holy shit. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to find me the faceless crater person, that I want to find this person.
And we'd write down the order, find faceless crater person. And there's 1 order token, we put it on the board. So if there's 4 wizards, 4 order tokens go on the board. We have to do 4 things in the course of this game.
And that sets the stage for role playing. So what we've done so far is had our session 0. Those of you who are familiar with role playing, sometimes now what people do is before they actually get to adventuring, they set things up, so basically before combat and action happen in D&D, you'll have a session 0 where everybody establishes their relationships and things like that. That's what we have done so far. And now we would role play. The way that role playing works is that each wizard gets to be protagonist of one of the orders. So your job is as protagonist is to use your magic to solve one of the orders that the queen has given you. And so you take the lead. You're basically the showrunner of this portion of the game, where you help establish the setting. The other players will play their own wizards, but they might also play NPCs. And so there's a little NPC card that we have for people to create their NPCs. And we have a complication mechanic. So basically, everybody has to throw 1 wrench into the plot at one time in the game. And it is great fun. So basically, everybody is like throwing wrenches into the plot. They're playing NPCs, but it is the protagonist who must use their magic in the scene in some way to affect the result that they want, which is basically figure out how to solve the problem that the queen has set before them.
If their magic works, we take the token, the order token off. If it doesn't, the queen moves down the sword. We've explained a bit about that. We are running out of time, so we want to go right. Let's say you won the game or you lost it with your fabulous wizards. The big climax has just occurred. Everybody is story told how the disastrous or triumphant or both ending has happened. Then everybody pulls back onto the flying saucer spaceship that's been watching this whole time.
Right. So at the end, we have an alien epilogue where instead of playing your own wizard, you take on the alien caseworker who assigned your wizard the power. And they review your performance. Are
And they
you
vote.
ready For the cosmic consciousness, probably not. But they review your performance and decide, well, let's let them gestate a little longer.
Decision pending.
Right, exactly. So you basically go around and have an epilogue where you play the aliens judging the characters that you just played. And that's the game. That is like soup to nuts, everything that you do in Negocios Infernales.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
We do have these postcards, and on the back of the postcards is the QR code that leads to the Kickstarter project pending page. We're kickstarting sometime next year with Outland Entertainment to make this game more than this wonderful reality it is currently.
And also, for you artists out there, there might be some of you who are like, these cards look really cool, but I'm not really a gamer so much, and if you're that sort of person, we want to most cordially invite you to 2 p.m. tomorrow's session, where we're just going to use the cards to inspire some writing. Those of you who are at the opening ceremonies, you'll know this. One of the joys that we've taken over the pandemic is just putting these cards in front of artists, writers, visual artists,
Poets.
and just say, how many cards do you want? How many spooky, creepy cards do you
Usually
want?
it's 1 to 4, and we time them, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, and then they write. And then we have everybody share what they wrote. It's sometimes a couple paragraphs. I had one person write 4 poems in 30 minutes, and
Yeah.
one person wrote an entire short story in 30 minutes. The cards are weird and they work.
They work. I mean, and so we would love to invite you to see you then. We have maybe like a minute or two. If anybody has any questions, we're happy to answer them. Go ahead, Lal. Yeah. Oh yeah, so it's going to be kickstarted next year. So please support the Kickstarter at that point. But
Use the QR code on the back or just go to Kickstarter, look up Negocios Infernales.
yeah, so when are you reading? Okay, so 2 p.m. today, Tina Jens is actually going to read the story that was inspired by a salon that she joined us at as well. So you can kind of see that. Also, the story I read today was inspired by a card too. So, we've been getting a lot of mileage out of it. We're going to need a second to clean up. So at this point, I'm just going to thank you so much for your attention. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time.
We have lots of these postcards. If you want them, just to come up and get them from us. We'd love
Yeah.
to give them out.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job, Carlos.
Yes. Or. Hello, hello.
Hello,
Hello.
can you
Testing.
hear me?
That's good. Perfect. Mhm. Hello,
Hello?
hello. Hello, hello. Hi there.
Hello,
Hi.
How
I'm
are you?
Dexter. I'm Dexter.
Dexter.
Nice.
Hi,
Nice to
I'm
meet you.
Deborah Militello.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. I never know if people want to shake hands these days or whatever their preference is. Okay. Yeah. Because
I'm safe. I've had both the original shot and the booster, so I'm
me
not
too.
safe.
I just had my booster last week.
Yeah, we got our boosters
Mhm.
last week too.
Because I had Johnson and Johnson. They allow boosters for everybody
they?
18 and over. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They were surprised to find out, as you know, that it was originally supposed to be a 2-dose vaccine. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I'm like, oh, I'm only half covered. So I jumped right away when it was
Yeah.
offered. So,
Yeah, as soon as I found out, I called our
Mhm.
county health thing and said, are you guys going to give the shots? And they said,
Yeah, of
yes. And I said,
course.
when? And they said, oh, in
Mhm.
about a week. Okay, sign me up.
Yeah, of course. It's a tiny panel. I'm tiny.
Yeah, I've never seen a
It's so scrunched together.
table like this. Usually they got like, 4 tables across the
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's kind of a subdued.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever read any Glenn Cook
I
stuff?
have, yeah.
I
Usually the
love
shorter
Glenn
stuff.
Cook.
He's wonderful.
He's a great guy. He lives down in
Mhm.
St. Louis, so he's always at the
Mhm.
conventions that I go to
Mhm.
around there.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, Glenn Cook is the reason that I managed to be a writer.
Mhm.
I've been writing for years, just
Mhm. Is that-
Yeah, this working okay? Folks, we're just wrapping up some tech with our 2 panelists who are joining us virtually, so we'll get going in just a sec here.
who this is. Oh, yeah.
Is that
that's
you?
me. How
Okay.
about that?
I think we're missing. oh, Somebody couldn't make.
So we've got two people who are joining us virtually.
Oh,
So I'm gonna
Oh,
put them
okay,
up on
that's-
here so we can hopefully see their
Okay.
faces at least a little bit.
oh. that would
that's
be
brand
nice.
new.
Yeah. It's hybrid stuff.
First time, yeah. First.
Uh-huh.
I thought about doing.
Yeah,
this, but
testing,
I was
testing.
Like, no, I want.
1, 2, 3, sibilance.
Yeah. I thought it was gonna be really cool.
Sorry, what was that? Can you all hear me on Zoom?
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
This is the biggest crowd I've seen. Are you the moderator?
No.
Oh, moderator.
Nice to meet you. So, should I refer to you?
Huh?
Is it Deborah?
Deborah.
Okay, that's cool. And
Yeah.
just make sure
Dexter.
Dexter. Cool.
Yeah.
Just make sure Dexter.
Deborah, Dexter, yeah, we're doing
Great.
okay.
Mhm.
Are you folks from Chicago? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm close to St. Louis.
Okay. Welcome, welcome.
That's
In
a nice
Illinois, we're
area.
close to St.
Yes.
Louis.
Very good.
Oh, hubby's taking pictures, yeah.
I'm hearing voices.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right, panelists on Zoom, I believe we are live. Okay, it's on mute. Oh, it's picking it up. I did. I am feedback. I'm not able to see. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Carolyn, would you mind muting? We're just trying to figure out an audio thing here. Where's that coming from? All right, folks, we're going to get started, I think. Sorry about the a little bit of a feedback we're getting here from somewhere. I am muted.
What is going on?
I'm muted. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're muted. Okay. All right, I'm just going to turn mine off. Seems easiest. Yes. We can do a round with ourselves.
It's a panelist.
I like that.
Yeah.
Put it on
If you
my
like,
thing.
if you like ribbons. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you having a reading or anything today?
I mean,
Huh?
I mean,
You're,
sorry, what was the question?
do you, are you going to do a reading?
Oh, not this,
Not this time.
not this time. I did it last.
Ah. except Glenn Cook's Garrett Files. This is set in an absolute city where everything that we find in regular cities, you can find here. You've got everything from the local restaurants, the arts area. Like I say, they have a wonderful theater there that's also haunted. But it's very much like any large city, just with fairy or magical type creatures. Garrett is perfectly normal human, and he has managed to involve himself, or at least be